Seattle pressed against the glass. From the 40th floor, the city looked like a circuit board, streets glowing in thin lines of sodium orange and cold blue LED. Rain traced slow paths down the windows, blurring the harbor lights and the cranes along the water. Inside, the only real light came from the wall of screens behind Madison Hale. She stood in front of them, with her jacket-off white shirt sleeves rolled to her elbows. The screens showed numbers charts, live feeds from crews in hard hats doing last checks in the drizzle. A countdown in the corner ticked toward the global launch of North Star Grid Solutions at exactly 8 o'clock the next morning. On another monitor, a live stream from the main atrium showed a skeleton of trusses and LED panels. Workers were climbing rigging testing spotlights that washed the North Star logo in cold white. Someone down there laughed. The sound did not reach the 40th floor. "Cut the Portland headcount by 10%, Madison said into the speakerphone. "Move the savings into contingency for tomorrow. If anything fails on camera, I want triple coverage." A nervous voice replied from the conference bridge. 10% is going to slow the deployment timeline, Madison. She looked at the city instead of the screen. A Ferris wheel turned slowly on the pier, its lights rotating over the black water. "We miss tomorrow and there is no deployment timeline," she said. "Make the cut. I will take the call with the regional director." Silence, then a muted, "Yes, ma'am," and the click of someone else being sacrificed to keep the machine moving. She tapped the speaker off, and the room exhaled. The hum of the HVAC returned, blending with the soft fan noise from the rack of servers in the corner. Madison rolled her shoulders once and reached for her tablet. A small notification pulsed on the lock screen. Calendar reminder. She almost ignored it. Then the words under the date caught her eye. Anniversary. She unlocked the screen. The calendar entry opened in the center. 18 years, Mom. Her thumb hovered over the screen. For a second, the office fell away. The faint scent of chlorine and expensive bath oils cut through the smell of coffee and electronics. The reflection in the glass shifted, and instead of a 34-year-old CEO, she saw herself at 16, still in a school uniform, standing in a doorway that led to polished white stone and silence. The image came in fragments, water lapping against the side of a tub that had overflowed, a hand hanging over the edge, fingers pale, nails still perfect. A bottle of pills tipped over little white discs on Italian marble. A note on the floor, the ink gone soft where the water had reached it. "Love is a liability." The words floated up intact. They always did. Her jaw tightened. She hit delete on the reminder. The pop-up disappeared. The screens behind her returned to graphs and camera feeds, and the office became an office again. At the edge of her desk, a silver picture frame lay face down, where she had left it that morning. She reached for it, hesitated, then left it where it was. The photo inside was 10 years old, and the woman in it smiled in a way Madison no longer did. Her desk phone lit up. The display showed a single word, Charles. She let it ring twice before she answered. "Yes. How are we looking for tomorrow?" Her father's voice was smooth even over the compressed line. There was money in it, and habit, and an assumption that whatever he asked would be handled. "Every major outlet is confirmed," Madison said. "Department of Energy, Governor, City Council, the European investors. The prototype grid is installed and tested. We will be ready." "You sound tired." "I am busy." He chuckled softly. "Success is a stamina sport, Maddie. Sleep after the launch. Your mother used to say half the battle was simply outlasting everyone who wanted to see you fail." Madison stared at the city lights. One by one, small windows in the high-rises flicked off, while the street level glowed on. Up here, the office tower felt separate, floating. "She said other things," Madison replied. There was a pause. He heard it, but chose to skip past it. "North Star is the future," he said. "This launch puts us ahead of every other grid solutions provider in the country. You hit this, and any board that ever doubted you can shut up and watch." Any board. He meant any man. He meant himself. "Then we hit it," she said. "Is that all?" "For now," he said. "I will see you on stage tomorrow." The line went dead. He never said goodnight. Madison set the receiver down. The clock in the corner of the largest screen slipped from 8:02 p.m. to 8:03. On the live security feed from the lobby, she watched a handful of late-shift employees cross the polished floor, their reflections sliding beside them. One of the cameras caught a maintenance worker in a navy shirt, pushing a cart of tools toward the service elevator, head ducked, shoulders square. She did not know his name. She did not notice she was watching him until he vanished into the elevator and the doors closed. Rain tapped faster at the glass. Wind shuddered faintly around the building, the sound like a distant ocean held at bay. Madison picked up her blazer from the back of the chair and slid it on, smoothing the lapels with both hands. Her assistant appeared at the door without knocking. The woman carried a tablet and a thin folder. "The journalist's floor plans for tomorrow," the assistant said, "and the talking points for the CNBC segment. Security also flagged an issue in the garage earlier. Someone tracked mud across the executive entrance." Madison flicked her gaze over. "Is it handled?" "Yes. One of the techs took care of it. They sent confirmation." "Then I do not need to hear about it." "Of course." The assistant placed the folder on the desk, then hesitated. "You should go home, Madison," she ventured. "You have been here since 6. Madison clicked open the CNBC talking points instead. "I am home," she said. The assistant withdrew. The door clicked shut. On the screens, the atrium cameras showed the rigging crew lowering a metal frame into place. An engineer in a high-visibility vest walked past the main generator enclosure behind the building, checking a panel with a tablet. The live feed from that camera glitched for half a second, a flicker of static over steel and concrete, then cleared. Madison did not see the flicker. She was scrolling through a list of questions a television host might ask her about grid's resilience and the future of clean power. She answered them in her head with practiced ease. She knew how to talk about light. She knew how to sell the idea of keeping cities from going dark. Outside the window, somewhere beyond the harbor and the black water, a storm front was gathering, the clouds thickening, the wind rising over the sound. The city kept shining against it, a net of fragile light stretched tight over the dark. Madison shut off the wall of screens one by one until her reflection stood alone in the glass, haloed by the glow from her desk lamp. For a second, she let herself look at the woman. Their hair pulled back in a severe twist suit, tailored to perfection, eyes unreadable. Then she turned away from the window and walked out heels sharp on the polished floor, leaving the 40th floor in darkness behind her, while the city below continued to burn in electric color. Lucas Ramirez liked the way the apartment smelled when he opened the door at night. Tomato sauce, plastic from Mia's science kits, a faint trace of baby shampoo that never seemed to leave her hair. It erased the day out of his lungs on the first breath. He kicked off his boots on the mat, careful not to drag any more rainwater onto the thin carpet, and set his tool bag down so the clink of metal would not wake the neighbors. The hallway outside still carried the damp chill of South Seattle in winter. Inside was 20 degrees warmer and louder. "Dad," he learned to turn left. Mia shot around the corner from the little galley kitchen socks sliding on the floor. Her hair was pulled into 2 crooked pigtails, each held by a neon green band. In her hands was a squat robot on wheels, wires, and sensors sticking out at odd angles. It whirred softly, lights on its tiny board blinking. "Did he now?" Luke said. "Did you feed him while I was gone, or is he running on pure stubbornness like you?" "I optimized his pathfinding." She said it carefully, proud as she had remembered the word from the book. "And I gave him a better name." She set the robot on the floor between them. It buzzed, rolled forward, encountered the leg of the coffee table, hesitated, then backed up, turned left, and navigated around it. Its little ultrasonic sensor clicked as it scanned. Luke whistled low. "He used to ram right into that thing and cry about it," he said. "What is he called now?" "Navigator," she declared. "Because he does not quit when there is an obstacle. He scans and finds a new way." She said it as if she were reciting the weather. Then she looked up to see his reaction. Luke crouched so his eyes matched hers. "That is a pretty good name," he said, "and a pretty good way to think." She rocked on her heels, pleased. Behind her, the tiny television on the crate blew out the bright colors of a cartoon into the room, the sound low. On the kitchen counter, 2 plates waited, each holding a slice of supermarket frozen pizza that had been reheated for the 3rd time. "You ate without me," he said, standing again, but his voice carried no reproach. "You were late," she answered. "Microwave said so." "Microwave is a snitch," he said. "I had to stay for the big launch meeting, remember? The new grid. The one that is going to power your robot show tomorrow if everything goes right." Mia's eyes widened. "That thing with the giant batteries," she said. "The video with all the blue lines and the glowing houses." "That thing," he confirmed. He walked to the tiny kitchen, pulled a 3rd beer from the back of the fridge, thought better of it, and reached for a bottle of water instead. His hands were still stained with the faint black of machine grease pressed into the lines of his knuckles. On the counter beside the plates lay a folded flyer, edges crumpled from handling. The school logo was printed at the top, along with a drawing of a robot holding a pencil. "Mia's Robotics Night, families. Welcome lights, provided by North Star Grid Solutions." He picked it up and read the line about the lights again. He had read it 5 times already. It still made him smile. "You know they put your company name on here," he said, waving the flyer. "They put your company name," she corrected. You fix the power so their lights work, so they sort of put your name. He felt something tight in his chest loosen half a notch. Sort of, he said. How are you feeling about tomorrow? You going to show everyone what Navigator can do? Mia shrugged a small lift of her shoulders that tried to hide the bounce in her toes. Kinda nervous, she admitted. What if he crashes? Then you debug, Luke said. You do not delete. She grinned. That is our rule. He took his plate and sat on the old sagging couch. The springs gave a familiar complaint under his weight. Mia sat cross-legged on the carpet, with her Slice the robot parked beside her like a dog resting after a good run. The muted news on the television shifted from cartoons to a business segment without anyone touching the remote. A suited anchor spoke under scrolling headlines about tech stocks and energy futures. A graphic flashed for North Star Grid Solutions, along with a still image of the atrium Luke had walked through today. The logo glowed in cool white above an artist's rendering of their modular grid. Mia pointed with a greasy finger. Your building, she said. One of them, he replied. The fancy one with the big glass windows. They showed a lady when you were at work, Mia said. On the morning thing, tall, ponytail. She talked about never letting the city go dark. She used the word resilient a lot. He took a bite, chewed, and washed it down with water. The bite tasted like cardboard and cheese from a cow that had given up on life. That is the boss, he said. Madison Hale. Is she nice? Luke thought of the email from his supervisor earlier, the one marked high priority, that had told all technical staff to be available tomorrow from dawn until the last reporter left the building. He thought of the stories he had heard in the maintenance break room, about her surgical questions in board meetings, about the way she could cut a proposal in half with 3 words. He also thought of the one time he had seen her in person in the lobby, surrounded by a ring of people with tablets as she strode past. She had moved with the sort of focus he remembered from commanding officers on the tarmac before a flight. The air around her had hummed with a different voltage. She is focused, he said finally. Does that mean no? Mia asked. It means she has a lot to think about. Do you have a lot to think about? He glanced at the clock on the stove. It was 9:15. He had 3 more hours before he needed to try to sleep 8, before his alarm 11, before the first wave of journalists stepped through those glass doors and started pointing cameras at everyone and everything that could make North Star look good or bad. Less than she does, he said, more than you need to worry about. Mia fed the last bite of crust to Navigator, which bumped against it and ignored the offering. When I grow up, I am going to build my own grid, she announced. So, schools never lose power in the middle of experiments. And so, nobody has to do homework by candle unless they want to. Ambitious, he said. She frowned in concentration. What is that? It means big, difficult, worth working for. She nodded as if filing the word away in some inner cabinet. I can do difficult, she said. I am half you can do anything. The line hit him in a place he tried not to examine too often. It had been almost 7 years since the note on the kitchen table, the one from Isabella that had said, I cannot do this and nothing else. Mia did not remember her mother. She remembered instead coding books from the library, scavenged parts from yard sales, and a father who sometimes came home with his shoulders hanging low, but always bent down to her level when she had a question. Luke leaned forward and set his plate on the low table. You can do a lot more than half, he said. Finish that slice so you do not pass out on stage tomorrow. It is not a stage, it is the cafeteria. All the best stages are cafeterias. She finished the pizza, wiped her hands on a napkin that had once advertised a delivery place he could no longer afford, then jumped up and scurried to the corner where her backpack waited. Mr. Lewis said we have to bring our own extension cords in case the outlets are weird, she said, rummaging. Do we have one that does not spark? He chuckled. We have 3 that do not spark, he said. I will pick the prettiest one. He stood, joints quietly complaining, and crossed to the small hall closet. Inside on the top shelf, behind a neatly folded stack of old uniforms, sat a coil of heavy-duty orange extension cord. His fingers brushed the fabric of the uniform before he took the cord down. For a moment, he held the dark blue jacket. It still carried the faint shadow of his name above the chest, the Air Force patch on the shoulder. He pictured a different ceiling above him, a different kind of metal under his boots, hot desert air cutting through engine noise. Dad? Mia's voice pulled him back. He blinked, set the jacket down, and took the cord instead. Got it, he said. He handed it to her. She hugged it like a prize. Navigator and I are going to be the coolest team there, she said. You already are, he replied. They went through the bedtime routine worn smooth from years of repetition. Teeth pajamas with tiny rockets on them. One chapter of a book about a girl who wanted to go to Mars and ended up building the rocket herself. He tucked her in, unplugged the robot, and set it on the dresser where it could watch over her, then sat on the edge of the bed for a minute while her breathing settled. Dad, yeah, if the power goes out tomorrow, can you fix it? He looked at her in the dim light from the hallway. She trusted him with everything that mattered. Her questions never included the word if in the same way adults used it. For her, it was just a shape of curiosity. I will do everything I can, he said. She nodded, satisfied, and turned onto her side, hugging a stuffed astronaut. In the kitchen, the clock slipped to 10. Luke washed the plates by hand, listening to the faint rattle of pipes in the wall, the distant thud of someone's music on another floor. He dried his hands on a towel and finally checked his phone. 3 new emails from North Star, 1 updated schedule, 1 reminder about security procedures, 1 marked urgent from his supervisor. All tech personnel required in the main building by 6 a.m. Report to the operations floor for assignments. Global launch day, no exceptions. He replied with a single word. Copy. He set the phone face down, turned off the kitchen light, and let the glow from the street find its way in through the blinds. In the bedroom, Mia murmured something in her sleep and rolled over. The robot's indicator light blinked slowly, as if matching her pulse. Outside, the city hummed. Somewhere across town, on a floor lined with glass and steel, the same name that sat in tiny print at the bottom of the robotics flyer glowed in 10-foot-high letters on a wall, North Star. Luke lay down on his own bed in the next room, listening to the building settle around him. Sleep came in pieces edged with the low, constant worry that lived under his ribs. Morning would come early. When it did, he would be one more anonymous set of hands in a tower of glass, making sure other people never had to think about what kept their lights on. Here, in the small square of space that held everything he loved, the only grid that mattered was the one he could feel when he reached over and touched the wall, steady and warm, feeding the night light in his daughter's room. The morning arrived in pieces. First, as a pale stripe behind the blinds in Luke's bedroom, then, as the sound of a bus sighing to a stop on the street outside, then as Mia's small hand patting his shoulder. Dad, your phone is yelling. The alarm buzzed on the nightstand. He fumbled for it, silenced it, and squinted at the time. 5:04 a.m. I was having a great dream, he said into the pillow. About what? About sleeping in. Mia snorted softly. You have to go make the big grid not explode. That is the general idea. He rolled out of bed, feet finding the worn path on the carpet between the mattress and the door. In the kitchen, he made coffee strong enough to prop his eyes open and packed his tools with the automatic care of habit. The orange extension cord for robotics night lay coiled on a chair with Mia's backpack and the robot already waiting for its turn on stage. She sat at the table in unicorn pajamas, chin in hands. You will be there tonight, right? She asked it in a flat tone like she was daring the universe to say no. He glanced at the flyer on the fridge held in place by a magnet that looked like a slice of pepperoni pizza. 6 o'clock, he said. Front row. You promised front row. I promised front row. She nodded, satisfied for now. He kissed the top of her head and pulled on his jacket. Go back to sleep a little, he said. You have a big night. Robots do not need sleep. Good thing you are not a robot. She thought about that. Yet, she said. He laughed, grabbed his tool bag, and stepped out into the hallway. The cold hit properly when he reached the street. Seattle in the early morning carried a particular kind of gray. Not fully night, not fully day, just wet air and streetlights and the hiss of tires through puddles. The bus ride into downtown was quiet. The other passengers hunched in their own thoughts, faces lit by phones. At North Star's tower, floodlights already bathed the front plaza. Temporary banners flapped in the breeze announcing the launch in bright, clean fonts. Inside, the lobby glowed with polished stone and glass, every surface reflective, every line straight. Luke used the side entrance. The service corridor smelled of cleaner and old dust. He swiped his badge, stepped through a metal door, and joined a trickle of other tech workers heading to the operations floor. They all wore the same navy shirts, the same ID clips, the same day ahead in abstract. Keep things running. Be invisible. The operations floor was a hive. Screens lined one wall, each showing a different part of the building's systems. Colored lines on digital diagrams shifted as technicians ran checks. A manager with a tablet rattled off assignments. Ramirez. Luke looked up. You are on mechanical inspection, the manager said. Start in the sub-basement. Work your way up. Anything that hums, rattles, or looks at you funny, you log it and report. Copy, Luke said. He took the inspection tablet and headed for the elevator. The main bank of elevators, the one guests used, gleamed under a chandelier. The service elevator corridor sat just behind it, plain and functional. He pressed the call button. While he waited, the echo of heels on stone drew his attention. Madison Hale crossed the lobby with her assistant and 2 senior executives in her wake. She wore charcoal gray today, the cut of the suit sharp enough to take a finger off. Her hair was pulled back, her expression flat as she listened to the assistant list media outlets and timing. For a moment, he saw her only in reflection on the polished floor, walking across her own duplicate. Then the front door slid open to admit a gust of wind and a streak of wet. A delivery cart had splashed through a shallow pool in the drop-off lane outside. Dirty water sprayed up, arcing onto the lower panel of the black Model S parked in the executive row. A diagonal line of muddy droplets streaked the paint. Madison's eyes flicked toward it, then down to the floor between the main doors and the elevators. A trail of faint brown prints marked where someone had walked through the lobby without wiping their boots properly. Her assistant shifted the tablet to her other hand, already turning to flag security. Madison lifted a hand and stopped her. "Maintenance," she said. Luke took a half step back before realizing she meant him. He was standing in the service corridor, threshold boots still damp, tool bag at his feet. "Yes," he said. She did not look at his face at first, only at the smear of moisture his soles had left on the once perfect marble. "Model S Space 3C, she said. "There is mud on the driver's side, and I do not want this floor looking like a construction site when the governor walks in." Her gaze lifted then just long enough to find his eyes. There was no heat in it, no particular cruelty, just expectation. He felt his jaw want to tighten. Years of military habit kept his shoulders level. "I will take care of it," he said. "Properly," she added. "Not with a gas station window squeegee." "I know the difference," he replied. Something in his tone made the nearest executive glance over. Madison's expression did not change. "Good," she said. Then she turned, and the gravity of her attention pulled her entourage toward the elevators. The doors slid shut on them, carrying them to the higher floors. Luke stood alone in the corridor for a second. He looked down at the barely visible damp prints his boots had left, then over at the gleaming expanse of lobby that was apparently not meant for dirt. He picked up his bag, logged the interaction in his brain under the category of things to forget, and diverted to the parking garage. The executive spaces lived on the first level near the elevator and the camera. The air smelled of concrete dust and exhaust. He found the Model S and 3C without needing to check. The mud streak ran in an ugly line from the front wheel well to the driver door. He unzipped his bag, pulled out a microfiber cloth and a bottle of cleaner he had bought himself. The ones in the supply closet left streaks. He worked in small sections, rinsing the cloth in a clean bucket between passes, careful not to scratch the paint. 15 minutes later, the car looked like it had rolled out of a showroom. The mud was gone. The water on the floor had been pushed into the drain with a squeegee, so the line of splatter ended at the grate. As he straightened, an older man in a faded army jacket shuffled into view near the garage entrance. He carried a shopping cart with a missing front wheel and a bedroll bungeed to the handle. His beard was mostly gray, his eyes still tracked like a soldier's. "You are going to put me out of a job, Ramirez?" the man called, voice rough with age and cigarettes. Luke smiled. "Did not know car detail was your specialty, Henry," he said. "Man has to diversify," Henry said. He pushed the cart closer, the bad wheel squeaking in protest. "You on the clock already?" "Yeah," Luke said. "Big day." He checked his watch. He had a few minutes before anyone expected him in the sub-basement. He reached into his bag again, this time pulling out the sandwich he had packed and not yet eaten. Turkey mustard, the cheapest bread on sale last week. He broke it in half and handed one piece to Henry. "You still sleeping under the bridge?" Luke asked. "When it does not flood," Henry said, taking the food. "City says they are going to fix the drainage. City says a lot of things." They ate leaning against the low barrier that separated the parking spots from the rest of the level. Above them, the strip lights buzzed softly. "You got that kid thing tonight," Henry said. "Robots." Luke nodded. "She has been programming that little tin can for weeks," he said. "She will be crushed if the power flickers." "Then do not let it," Henry said, as if it were simple. They finished the food. Luke checked the time again and exhaled. "I better go make sure the walls do not fall down," he said. "You do that," Henry replied. "I will hold the fort out here." Luke stowed the cloth and cleaner, slung the bag over his shoulder, and headed back toward the service elevator. Hours later, the building no longer felt like itself. Media crews had transformed the atrium into a forest of tripods, cables, and soft boxes. A temporary stage hugged one side of the space with a bank of chairs fanning out in front of it. A scale model of a neighborhood block, sat under glass in the center, each tiny house wired to light up when the demonstration grid sent power through it. The governor's staff swept through checking sightlines. A North Star public relations lead smiled so much her cheeks looked ready to crack. Madison moved through it all with the calm of someone walking a route she had memorized, pausing for briefings, giving short, precise instructions. Upstairs in the operations room, Luke watched the controlled chaos on the wall of monitors between circuits and pressure readings. His inspection list glowed green. Whatever came next, it was not going to be because a loose panel had gone unnoticed. Final systems check, the operations manager called. 15 minutes to show time. Technicians confirmed values, flipped software switches, watched numbers settle. For a moment, everything aligned. Power flowed from the main feed into the building, then into the storage banks in the back lot. The batteries reported a full charge. The demonstration microgrid intake and output balanced on the screen like a seesaw held perfectly level. Then the pressure graphic for the main generator flickered. Luke saw it out of the corner of his eye. A spike, a dip, a tiny variance in a line that had been stable all morning. "Did you see that?" he asked the tech at the next station. "Probably a sensor blip," the tech said without looking. "We have redundancy." The line steadied again. The manager moved on to the next item on the list. In the atrium, the lights dimmed to signal the start of the presentation. A hush rolled through the crowd. The camera's tally lights winked from red to steady, indicating they were live. Madison stepped up to the podium. The North Star logo glowed behind her, crisp and certain. "Good afternoon," she began. "Thank you for being here to see what we believe is the next chapter in how cities stay powered." On the operations screen, another spike hit. This one higher. A warning icon flashed in the corner of the generator schematic. "That is not a sensor," Luke said. The words were still leaving his mouth when the whole schematic went red. There was no dramatic explosion, no shower of sparks, just a sudden total absence. The building swallowed its own light. In the atrium, Madison's microphone cut off mid-sentence. The big screens died. The stage lights went black. For a still moment, the only illumination came from the pale daylight filtered through the high glass, barely enough to outline the shapes of people in their seats. A murmur rose. Somewhere a camera crew cursed. On the operations floor, every monitor besides the emergency status panel went dark. Battery indicators dropped from green to gray. The main feed showed a cascade of fault codes that did not match any of the presets. "Talk to me," the manager snapped. "What just happened?" "Main generator failure," someone said. "Root cause unknown. The auto diagnostics are not catching it." Luke stared at the red shape that represented the heart of the system. He knew the sound of a generator going wrong before the numbers caught up. He could almost hear it in his bones. No one was looking at him yet. All eyes were on the error codes. He felt the same tightness under his ribs that he had the night Mia asked if he could fix it if the power went out. On the atrium feed, which flickered back in grayscale as the emergency backup for security cameras kicked in, he saw Madison standing at the podium. In the thin natural light, her face unreadable as the room around her sank deeper into shadow. For a heartbeat, the whole world held its breath. On the atrium camera in washed-out grayscale, Madison's figure stood at the podium in a pool of thin daylight. Rows of faces tilted up toward her pale ovals in the dim. Someone's phone flashlight came on a pinprick of white wobbling in the crowd. Another followed. The darkness fractured. "Do we have backup power?" the operations manager barked. "We have emergency only," a tech answered, fingers flying. "Stairs exit signs, life safety. The demo grid is offline. The main generator is red. The city feed is fine. The problem is internal." "Diagnostics," the manager said. "They are already running," another tech replied. "They are not finding a single point of failure. It looks like a cascade." The manager cursed under his breath. "How long to get it back?" 6 hours to properly diagnose," someone said, voice tight. "Another 3 to implement, maybe 4 if we need parts brought in." "That is 9 hours," the manager said. "We have an international press corps in our atrium right now." Luke watched the red shape on the screen. The fault codes spilled like static down one side of the schematic, each line more useless than the last. He dragged 2 fingers down the touch surface and zoomed into the mechanical overlay. Pressure readings danced near a field of small symbols. One of them blinked in orange. "Can you bring up the physical sensors?" he asked quietly. The nearest tech glanced at him as if noticing him for the first time. "Mechanical is over there," she said, nodding toward the far wall. Luke stepped past 2 chairs, slipped between 2 others, and reached the mechanical station. The tech on duty looked harassed. "What are you doing, Ramirez?" he said. "Looking," Luke said. He tapped the overlay isolating the line that ran from the main chamber to the exhaust housing. Pressure had spiked and dropped, then spiked again, the pattern uneven. The relief valve icon pulsed slowly in warning. He had seen that pattern before, not in a glass tower in Seattle, but in a tented operations unit next to a humming monster of a generator in Kandahar, where the dust came from every direction at once and nothing was ever really clean. "It is not the grid," he said. The mechanical tech frowned. "It is all connected," he said. "The outputs are dead." "I know," Luke said, "but the source is not electrical. Look at the venting." He pointed at a tiny thumbnail camera feed that showed the outside of the generator enclosure in the back lot. Even in black and white, the condensation vented from the top looked wrong, too heavy on one side. "The relief valve is sticking," Luke said. "You are building up pressure in the wrong place. The safety system is tripping and taking the whole thing down in a chain. Your software sees it as a ghost fault, so it cannot isolate it." "That is not possible," the tech said. "The relief system was checked last week." "Possible does not care about your maintenance log," Luke replied. Before the tech could answer, the door to the operations room opened, and 3 people walked in with the kind of posture that pulled attention. The chief engineer, hair fraying out of her bun. The head of corporate communications, already pale. And Madison, still in her suit, no microphone now, her face sharper without the stage lights. She took in the room with one sweep. Dark screens, glowing error panel, people hunched forward. "Tell me," she said. The manager stepped forward. "Main generator failure," he said. "We still have city power for life safety, but the demonstration grid is down. Diagnostics are not returning a clear cause. We are looking at conservatively 6 hours to be certain we do not make it worse." "We do not have 6 hours," Madison said. "We have journalists with live feeds that go cold in 30 minutes. We have the governor in my atrium and 3 investment funds already on the fence." The chief engineer raised her hand as if in a classroom. "Madison," she said, "we can move to a partial demonstration. Record a simulated run and play it later for the web. We delay the live grid test." Madison's eyes were flat. "A fake," she said. "A controlled narrative," the communications head offered. She let the suggestion hang for a second, then shook her head. "No," she said. "We sold real. We do real." She turned to the chief engineer. "What is wrong with my generator?" The woman spread her hands. "We are not sure yet," she said. "It is a complex Swedish-engineered unit with triple redundancy. Every sensor we have says something different. If we guess and are wrong, we could fry the whole unit." "Time estimate. 6 hours to be confident," the engineer repeated. "Another 3 to 4 to repair or replace any damaged component. Best case, we are back up tonight. Worst case, tomorrow." Madison looked at the wall clock. It was 11:45. She pictured the schedule in her head, the camera hits slotted to the minute, the international stream at 1 p.m., the embargoed press releases ready to drop the moment the model neighborhood lit up behind her. None of that mattered if the lights stayed off. From the side of the room, Luke heard his own voice come out before he had decided to speak. "It is the pressure relief valve," he said. The room went still around him. Dozens of eyes shifted in his direction. The chief engineer blinked. "I am sorry," she said. "Who are you?" "Luke Ramirez," he said. "Facilities. I have been watching the mechanical feed. The relief valve is sticking. It is triggering a pressure cascade which the software reads as a fault everywhere and nowhere. The generator is dropping to protect itself." A small laugh leaked from someone near the back. Preston, the young engineer from Stanford, sat hunched over his tablet. He looked up, his expression caught between disbelief and amusement. "You are suggesting," Preston said, "that our entire engineering team misdiagnosed a failure a maintenance tech spotted on a grainy camera feed." Luke did not bother to look at him. "I am suggesting I have seen that exact pattern before," he said. "Different desert, same manufacturer." The chief engineer folded her arms. "Even if you were right," she said, "this is not a field repair. It is a controlled system. We do not bypass safety protocols based on a hunch." "It is not a hunch," Luke said. "It is experience." Preston snorted. "Building superintendent experience," he said. Luke turned his head then. Their eyes met across the room. "Air Force Civil Engineering," Luke said. "Forward operating bases running on generators built by the same Swedish company you are using. I have bypassed that valve under incoming fire. I have rebuilt half a system from scavenged parts because there were people in a field hospital who would die if I did not. This is not a guess." The words were plain without bravado. They landed quietly, then spread. Madison watched his face while he spoke. His tone lacked the edge she often heard in people trying to impress her. There was a steadiness there she recognized from other places. Tarmacs at dawn, war rooms where decisions did not fit on a slide. "How long?" she said. He shifted his attention to her. 90 minutes, he said. "Maybe less if I can get to the valve and if your supply closet has not been stocked by accountants." The room erupted. "You cannot be serious," the chief engineer said. "We cannot hand a mission-critical system to a contractor with no oversight. We have procedures." "Let him try," someone else muttered. "If he pushes the wrong sequence, he could overpressurize the whole chamber," Preston said. "We could lose the generator completely." "We already lost it," Luke said. "You just do not want to admit it yet." Madison raised one hand. The noise dropped. "You are telling me," she said, looking at Luke, "you can get my generator back online in an hour and a half." "I am telling you I can give you a chance," he said. "Right now, you have none." Her gaze flicked to the wall clock again, then to the screen showing the atrium. In the gray feed, she saw guests shifting in their seats, phones held up like floating lanterns. A PR person whispered in the governor's ear, no doubt offering platitudes about minor technical issues and brief delays. She felt her father's expectations like a weight on the back of her neck, his voice echoing from the night before. "Any board that ever doubted you. Any man." She walked across the room until she stood in front of Luke. Up close, she saw the oil in the lines of his hands, a small scratch on his wrist, the North Star badge clipped to a standard-issue shirt. "If you fail," she said, "if you make this worse and we lose the generator entirely, what happens to my launch?" "You reschedule," he said. "You spin. You write a lot of emails and have some hard conversations. What happens to my reputation?" He held her gaze. His were a deep brown, not especially dramatic, but direct. "People in your world forget faster than you think," he said, "or they wait for the next chance to be wrong about you." Something sharp in her chest twisted, then settled. She stepped closer so that the rest of the room fell just slightly out of focus. "Let me make this simple for you," she said, "and for them." She knew the engineers were listening. She counted on it. "You get that generator running before 2 o'clock, she said. "You bring my grid back alive in front of the cameras, and I will walk back into that atrium and kiss you in front of every person in that room." A ripple of surprise moved through the staff. Someone choked on a breath. Preston stared as if he had misheard. Madison did not look away from Luke. "If you fail," she said, voice even, "you are finished here. No severance, no reference, no quiet reassignments to another building the city owns. This industry is small. I will make sure no one who matters ever calls you." The room was so quiet Luke could hear the faint white noise of the air system fighting its own panic. He considered the terms for exactly as long as they deserved, which was not very. "I do not care about you. About your kiss," he said. The words had no edge, only fact. A faint color rose along the edge of her cheekbones. No one spoke to her like that. Not in this building, not anywhere in the city. "What do you care about?" she asked. "My daughter's robotics night is running on your demo grid," he said. "You put your logo on that flyer. The school is using your system to keep their lights on. If this stays down, they cancel. She has been rehearsing for weeks. She thinks I can fix anything." He drew a breath. "I will fix your generator because it is broken, and because I know how," he said. "That is the only deal that matters to me." For a second, their eyes locked. Behind him, the chief engineer shifted, as if she might step in. Madison lifted one hand in a small gesture that stopped her. 90 minutes, she said. "You have them." Luke nodded once. "I will need access to the enclosure," he said. "Full clearance, and no one touching the controls unless I say so." "You have it," Madison said. She turned to the operations manager. "You heard him," she said. "Get him everything he asks for. If anyone here has a better plan that takes less than an entire business day, speak now." No one did. In the service elevator on the way down to the back lot, Luke felt the hum of the building through the metal walls. It was different now, quieter, without the full load on the system. The emergency circuits kept the arteries alive, but the heart was out. He stepped out into cold air. The generator enclosure loomed ahead, a big metal monolith behind a security fence. Steam drifted from one vent in an uneven plume. Security had already opened the gate. A maintenance cart sat nearby, stocked with tools and parts. Luke ignored most of it and pulled his own kit from his shoulder, the one that had followed him through bases in 3 countries. He laid his hand on the side of the generator, feeling the vibration. Under all the technology, it was still a machine. Machines spoke in heat and sound and rhythm. All right, all right, he murmured mostly to himself. You and me. The roof of the enclosure rattled in the wind. Up close, the generator was less sculpture and more brute fact. A rectangular mass of metal and piping, painted industrial gray streaked with old rain. The smell of warm oil and hot steel hung around it like a coat. Luke keyed open the small access door and stepped inside. The temperature jumped immediately. The air felt thick, like he had stepped into the breath of some big animal forced to sleep. The interior lights flickered on emergency power, dim strips along the ceiling. Gauges lined the walls, needle faces glowing faintly. Panels on the main housing blinked with error codes that meant very little and everything at once. He shrugged out of his North Star jacket and hung it on a hook by the door. The white t-shirt underneath clung to his back. Sweat pricked along his spine, even though he had just come in from the cold. "Operations, this is Ramirez," he said into the radio clipped to his belt. "I am in the enclosure." Static, then the manager's voice. "Copy, we have you on cams." He glanced at the small dome of a security camera in the corner. Somewhere upstairs, people he did not know were now watching his every move. "Do not touch the main control interface yet," the chief engineer's voice cut in. "We want to monitor what you do." He clicked the radio once in acknowledgement and set it back on his belt. He laid his palm on the main casing again. The vibration under his fingers carried a stutter that did not belong there. "All right," he muttered. He popped the first panel. Behind it, cables ran in neat bundles held with zip ties and labeled with small printed tags. It all looked very clean. Too clean, like a picture in a brochure. The problem he needed was not here. He moved around the housing opening access panels, tracing the physical path of the pressure line he had seen on the schematic. The relief valve sat 3 levels in behind a heat shield and a thicket of pipes. Of course it did. He scanned the small shelf of tools someone had staged for him. Wrenches, safety gear, a manual, and a plastic binder so thick it could stop a bullet. He left most of it where it was and opened his own kit instead. Inside were tools that had lost their shine a long time ago. A coil of wire stripped of its original casing. A pair of pliers with one handle wrapped in tape from a base in Germany. A flathead screwdriver with the tip ground down to a custom width he liked. "Pressure reading is climbing again," the mechanical tech's voice said in his ear. "Are you seeing anything?" "It is stuck in a half-open position," Luke said. "The valve. It is trying to do 2 things at once. It cannot." He wedged himself sideways between the housing and the wall to reach it. Metal pressed into his shoulder. His fingers brushed the valve body. It felt too hot. He eased it another fraction of a turn. It did not give. "Of course you are stubborn," he said softly to the machine. He pulled his hand back, wiped his palm on his pants, and began unbolting the shield. The screws had that special kind of resistance that meant they had not been touched since installation. Sweat trickled down his jaw. Somewhere in the distance, through layers of concrete and steel, faintly he thought he could feel the tremor of footsteps as people moved around in the atrium. Upstairs, the operations room clustered around the camera feeds. The main display showed Luke's back shirt, already damp arms working in a tight space. A smaller window held a live image from the atrium. The emergency lights had been brought up a notch just enough to keep people from tripping over cables. Madison stood off to the side of the stage conferring with the communications head. "We can do a partial," the PR man insisted. "Talk through the tech show slides, promise a full demonstration at a later date." Madison listened, eyes on the crowd. Local journalists held their phones waiting for instructions. 2 international crews had switched to covering the governor, instead panning their cameras away from the dark bulk of the grid model. On another screen in the operations room, the governor checked his watch. "Give him time," the operations manager said quietly, behind her the words slipping out before he could stop them. She glanced at the nearest camera on instinct, as if she could see through it to the generator enclosure. "How much pressure is left in that system?" she asked over the radio. "High enough that I do not like looking at the numbers," the mechanical tech replied. "Then stop looking at them," Luke said under his breath. He had the shield off now. The valve assembly sat exposed, a metal cylinder with pipe branches feeding in and out. A fine line of mineral buildup marked where steam had leaked in a thin, steady line over time. "Whoever signed off on your maintenance check last week did not listen very closely," Luke said. He tried the main adjustment again. It refused to move, welded in place by heat and neglect. He could shut the whole system down, let it cool, disassemble the valve, clean it, reseat it, and bring it all back up by the book. It would take half a day if everything went right. He did not have half a day. He pulled the screwdriver from his kit and tapped the side of the housing just below the main stem. Not hard, just enough to send a vibration through the metal. He counted under his breath, then tapped again. In Kandahar, the generator there had been choking on sand. Every breath it took pulled grit into places it should not be. Half the time, the manuals were useless. They had learned to improvise under passage or sit in the dark. He slid the screwdriver up, found the narrow line where the stem disappeared into the body, and tapped again this time with more intention. "Pressure spike," the tech said in his ear. "Careful." "It will drop," Luke said. It did, a fraction at first, then more. "There you are," he whispered. He worked faster. A temporary bypass here, a shim there. He stripped a length of wire, twisted it with his fingers, and made a connection the manual would never show. Not perfect. Functional. Sweat ran into his eyes. He blinked it away and kept moving. Time thinned. The world became the circle of steel in front of him, the sound of his own breath, the faint hiss of steam. In the operations room, pressure readings began to stabilize. The wild swings settled into a slower, more familiar wave. "What did he do?" Preston asked, leaning closer to the screen as if it would tell him. "He is isolating the fault," the chief engineer replied, almost grudging, "and building a secondary pathway around it." "It is not safe to run like that long-term," Preston said. "It does not need to be long-term," the operations manager said. "It needs to last until the last camera leaves." On the atrium feed, Madison stepped back up to the podium. The emergency lighting caught the planes of her face in a softer way than the stage lights had. "We appear to have underestimated Seattle's appetite for power," she said into the microphone voice, carrying clearly now that the backup audio had kicked in. A low chuckle rippled through the crowd. "I am told we are experiencing a minor internal issue. While our team works, I invite you to remember that this is exactly why resilient grids matter. It is not about the days everything goes right. It is about what happens on days like this." Her tone was light. Her knuckles were white on the edge of the podium where the cameras could not see. Luke made one last connection. The bypass circuit hummed under his hand. He closed the temporary relay and felt the whole machine respond. In his ear, the mechanical tech's voice changed. "Pressure normalizing," she said. "Voltage coming back up through the converter. The battery banks are waking up." "Operations, I am ready to attempt restart," Luke said. The operations manager swallowed. "Do it," he said. At the podium, Madison kept talking, buying seconds, a sentence at a time. "Our system is designed so no single failure brings the whole neighborhood down," she said. "Redundancy, flexibility, human beings who know how to improvise better than any algorithm, which is why we are still here and why the lights are about to come back on." She did not know if that last part was true. She said it anyway. In the enclosure, Luke hit the main start sequence manually. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a low vibration rolled through the floor. The sound deepened, grew, settled into a familiar rhythm. The generator did not roar to life so much as clear its throat and then begin to speak in a steadier voice. In the operations room, the main schematic shifted from red to yellow, then to green. "We have output," a tech said, disbelief and relief tangled together. "Battery charge is rising," another added. "Grid connection stable, demo microgrid offline, then online. It is back." The atrium lights flared. Not to full brightness at once, but in stages row by row, like someone pulling curtains off a bank of windows. The model neighborhood under glass, lit up house by house, tiny rooms glowing in miniature. There was a beat of silence, then applause. It started near the back, then spread forward as people realized this was not an evacuation, not a cancellation. It washed over the stage like a physical thing. Madison let herself breathe. Her shoulders loosened a fraction. She did not smile wide. She let one corner of her mouth lift and used the sound of clapping to cover the small exhale that escaped her. "Innovative systems," she said after the noise ebbed, "and the people who refuse to let them stay broken. Now, let me show you what this grid can really do." The rest of the presentation ran on rails. She had rehearsed it so often she could have done it in her sleep. The model neighborhood responded on cue. The talking points about resilience, climate pressure, and equity found their marks. Cameras caught angles. Quotes landed. Her father, watching from the side, wore a look that would read as pride in photographs. Upstairs in the operations room, most of the staff slumped in their chairs for a moment, adrenaline ebbing. The chief engineer stared at the schematic, where Luke's makeshift bypass glowed as a small deviation from the ideal. "Get a full log of everything he did in there," she told the mechanical tech. "Every change, every pressure fluctuation. I want to understand it before we tear it down and do it by the book." "Where is he now?" Preston asked. The camera in the enclosure showed an empty room. Only Luke's jacket remained on the hook. "Probably got tired of us watching him work." the operations manager said. Out back, Luke stepped into the cold again, closing the enclosure door gently behind him. The temperature drop felt like a shock. His shirt clung to his back. His arms trembled faintly, the delayed protest of muscles that had held tension for too long. He checked his watch. 1:57. 3 minutes to spare. He stood there for a moment, breathing, letting the sound of the generator behind the wall settle into his bones. Then he picked up his kit, shrugged into his jacket, and started walking toward the service entrance. He did not go back to the operations floor. There was nothing more for him to do there that anyone would welcome. His part of the day was done. The rest belonged to people who wore better suits and knew how to speak in headlines. He cut through the ground-level corridor, avoiding the slice of lobby where the guests might see him. The muffled echo of applause still reached him through the walls. He let it roll past. In the maintenance locker room, he washed his hands at the sink, watched the black and gray swirl down the drain until his fingers looked almost clean again. He changed into a fresh shirt and his flannel with a fabric familiar on his shoulders. He stowed his badge, checked his phone. A text from the babysitter. Mia says to remind you about front row. She is nervous, but excited. He typed back. Would not miss it. He clocked out. His shift technically ended at 2. The fact that he had carried a $12 million piece of equipment on his back for the last 90 minutes did not change the time on the timesheet. In the parking garage, fluorescent lights hummed. His truck waited in its usual spot near the far wall, paint-faded one-side mirror held together with zip ties. He opened the back, slid his tool bag in, and shut it with the precise, gentle force of a man who could not afford another repair. The sharp click of heels on concrete sounded to his left. He knew who it was before he turned. Madison crossed the garage. The gray of her suit softened slightly by the flat light. Her hair was still perfectly in place. The only sign of what she had just been through was the slight flush high on her cheeks. You left, she said. Yup, he replied. The launch is still happening. My part is not. He leaned on the side of his truck, arms folded loosely, not defensive, not inviting, just there. She stopped a few steps away, close enough that he could see the tiny flecks of darker green around the center of her eyes. About what I said earlier, she began. The kiss, he said. That was not how I should have motivated a team, she said. It was unprofessional. It was also insulting to you. It was not about me, he said. It was for them, to remind them who holds the power in the room. Her lips pressed together for a second. You are not afraid to say what you think, are you? She said. He shrugged. I spent a lot of years in places where not saying what you think gets people hurt, he said. This is easier. She glanced at his truck, then back at him. They told me in there that what you did is not stable long term, she said. That you built a bypass, no manual covers. It will hold, he said. Long enough for your cameras. After that, you shut it down clean, the valve fixed the root problem. You have the luxury of time when no one is bleeding. He said it simply. Her fingers tightened around the strap of the small portfolio she carried, knuckles paling, then relaxing. You saved my launch, she said. I saved a generator, he corrected. Your launch saved itself. She stepped closer enough that he could smell the faint woody note of her perfume under the sharper sense of oil and concrete. Why did you really do it? She asked. And do not say because it was broken. There are 100 broken things in this city. You happen to be on my payroll. He thought of Mia's flyer on the fridge, the line about lights provided by North Star. Her face when she had said half you can do anything. You put your name on my kids' school event, he said. You told them you would keep their lights on. I work for them a lot more than I work for you. There was no accusation in it, just allocation. Something shifted almost imperceptibly in her expression, a crack in smooth glass. You are a very inconvenient man, Mr. Ramirez, she said. You have no idea, he replied. For a moment, the air between them felt crowded with things neither of them had language for yet. Then Madison did something that surprised even her. She reached up on her toes and pressed her lips to his cheek. It was not the theatrical thing she had described in the operations room. There was no audience, no element of spectacle, just a brief warm contact of skin on skin, the slightly uneven brush of lipstick against stubble. Thank you, she said quietly, close enough that the word barely needed air. For getting the lights back. He searched her face, not sure what he was looking for, only that he needed to see it before he answered. I told you, he said. I did it for Mia. He opened the driver's side door. I have to go keep another promise, he added. He climbed in, started the truck, and pulled away. In the rearview mirror, he saw her still standing there, a figure in a perfect suit, in an imperfect garage, watching a battered pickup merge with the rest of the city. The cafeteria at Jefferson Elementary smelled like waxed floors, juice boxes, and nerves. Folding tables had been pushed back against the walls. A line of long extension cords snaked across the linoleum, taped down in wide gray strips. At the far end, under a banner that read, "Robotics Night," in letters that leaned at different angles, a row of kids stood behind their homemade machines. Every few seconds, a robot lurched forward, spun in a circle, or fell dramatically on its side. Parents laughed, teachers clapped, phones recorded everything. Luke stood at the back of the room with a paper cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. The badge on his chest tonight said Visitor instead of North Star. It felt lighter and heavier at the same time. Mia was third in line. Her hair was pulled back with more care than usual. Someone had added a bit of glitter to her eyelids. She wore her favorite t-shirt, the one with a rocket ship blasting out of a comic book frame. Navigator sat on the table in front of her, metal and plastic and open wires, the orange extension cord coiled neatly beside him. "You good, kiddo?" Luke asked when she glanced his way. She nodded too fast. "My stomach is doing the thing," she said. "Butterflies." "Robot butterflies," she corrected. "They have gears. You will be fine. What if he crashes into Principal Nguyen? Then Principal Nguyen will have an excellent story." She snorted, shoulders relaxing a fraction. The school principal stepped up to the microphone at the edge of the stage, tapped it twice, and smiled at the room. "Thank you all for coming out tonight," she said. "We are very proud of our young engineers, and we are grateful to North Star Grid Solutions for providing the power that makes our little robot showcase possible." A low cheer went up. Several parents glanced at the logo printed at the bottom of the flyer on the tables. Mia leaned close to Luke and whispered, "That is your place." Luke watched the flicker of fluorescent lights overhead. Somewhere miles away in a fenced enclosure behind a glass tower, the generator hummed in a new rhythm he had helped coax out of it. "Sort of," he said. One by one, kids demonstrated what their robots could do. Some robots followed lines on the floor. Some tried to avoid obstacles and failed. A few just beeped apologetically and turned in place. Each time, the parents clapped like it was a Broadway premiere. When it was Mia's turn, she carried Navigator to the taped square in the center of the floor. Mr. Lewis, her teacher, set up 2 folding chairs and a trash can lid to serve as a maze. "Tell us what your robot does, Mia," he said, handing her the microphone. She looked out at the crowd. Her eyes found Luke and stayed there. "This is Navigator," she said. "He has ultrasonic sensors and he knows how to map a path around obstacles. If something is in his way, he does not stop. He scans and finds a new route." A soft murmur passed through the adults. Mr. Lewis raised his eyebrows, impressed. "Ready when you are," he said. Mia set Navigator down at the starting line, plugged him into the orange cord, and tapped a key on the small controller in her hand. For a second, nothing happened. Then the robot rolled forward, small wheels humming. He approached the first chair, paused, backed up an inch, angled himself, and slipped around its leg. The crowd made a collective sound, a mix of amusement and recognition. He reached the trash can lid, hesitated, scanned left and right, and found the gap between the second chair and the taped line. He cleared the obstacle, then beeped once, and spun in a little circle of victory. Mia's grin was blinding. Luke realized he was holding his breath. He let it out and clapped with everyone else, his hands stinging. Afterward, Mia barreled into him, her arms tight around his middle. "You saw," she said against his shirt. "I saw," he said. "You and Navigator nailed it." She pulled back. "You fixed the power right," she said. "At your work. That is why this stayed on." He thought of the dark atrium, the generator's stubborn valve, the sweat on his palms, the feeling when the machine finally settled into the right rhythm. "I helped," he said. She nodded as if that confirmed something she had already decided. "So we both did our jobs," she said. "Looks like." By the time they got home, it was late. Mia fell asleep with her head against his shoulder on the bus, her glitter slightly smudged, her fingers still curled around the participation ribbon they had given every kid. Luke carried her up the stairs, tucked her into bed without fully waking her, and set Navigator on the dresser to stand guard. Only when the apartment was silent did he let himself think about the day in full. The generator, the bet. Madison Hale in the parking garage, her mouth close to his cheek, the faint pressure of her hand on his arm. He lay awake longer than he wanted, staring at the ceiling, listening to the building's tired pipes. When sleep finally came, it was shallow and full of humming machines. The headlines the next morning loved Madison. Clean Tech CEO saves the day. North Star launch survives power scare. Resilient grid proves itself in real time. Screenshots of the moment, the lights came back up, flooded business feeds. Clips of Madison making a joke about Seattle's appetite for power played on repeat. In every photo, she looked composed. The story belonged to her. Inside North Star, the story had other angles. In the break room used by the operations staff, someone had already started calling the incident the Valve Miracle. Everyone had their own version of what they had seen on the camera feeds. Somewhere in the middle of it, like a quiet footnote, was the detail that a contract tech had crawled into the guts of a generator and talked it into behaving. In the executive suite, no one mentioned the generator at all. They talked about investor follow-up, about the spike in website traffic, about the offers already coming in. Madison sat at the head of a glass conference table while the leadership team went around reciting numbers. Her mind tracked each data point, sorted it, measured it. Another part of her was back in a cold garage listening to a man tell her he did not care about her kiss. At lunch, she returned to her office instead of going out. The city spread under her windows, as always inviting and distant. On her desk, the picture frame she had left face down the day before still lay in the same position. She righted it without thinking. Her mother, years younger than Madison was, now smiled out of the silver frame. Hair swept up lips, painted eyes bright with some anticipation the photograph had frozen in place. Madison stared at it for a moment, then set it carefully back this time, facing outward. Her intercom buzzed. "Yes," she said. Her assistant's voice came through. "The events team wanted to confirm your attendance at the gala next Friday," she said. "They need final names for the VIP list." "The foundation thing," Madison said. "The company's annual charity event. Black tie $500 a plate, all proceeds going to programs that made for excellent press releases." "Yes," the assistant said. "And they asked if you had a preference for your table placement. Several of our board members have requested to sit with you." "Tell them I will be there," Madison said. "We will finalize tables later." "Understood." Also, facilities sent an incident report about the generator. They included a name for the tech who did the manual restart in case you wanted to send a note. There was a small pause before that last phrase, as if the assistant already knew the answer, but was required to offer. "Do I need to?" Madison asked. "No," the assistant said. "The report is closed." "Then file it," Madison said. "Yes, Madison." The line clicked off. She leaned back in her chair and looked at the ceiling. The praise from her father that morning died quicker in her memory than the quiet refusal in the parking garage. "You are a very inconvenient man, Mr. Ramirez." The thought arrived with his name. She did not set out to find him. That was what she told herself. It was coincidence that she chose to walk the long way to the elevator when she left a meeting on the 12th floor and passed a service corridor where two techs were arguing over a wiring diagram. It was chance that her eyes caught Luke's profile through the open door of the maintenance workshop, his head bent over a younger worker's shoulder. "No, like this," he was saying, taking the tool gently and adjusting the angle. "You do not just swap a part because the manual says so. You ask why it failed so you do not repeat it." The younger tech nodded, making notes. Madison slowed without meaning to. The fluorescent lights in the workshop turned the room a flat, unforgiving white. It made the grease on Luke's hands more visible, the small, tired lines at the corners of his eyes deeper. He looked different from the men she spent time with in boardrooms. There was no polish here, only a density of competence. One of the techs glanced up, saw her in the doorway, and jolted to something like attention. "Ms. Hale," he said. Luke turned. For a second their eyes met. Something unreadable flickered there. Then he straightened. "Ma'am," he said. She realized she had no reason to be standing there. No question. No directive. "Carry on," she said, and kept walking. As she stepped into the executive elevator, she felt a faint heat in her face that had nothing to do with the building's temperature. 2 days later, the embossed invitations for the gala went out. Most of them went through assistants and inboxes. One stayed in Madison's hand a moment longer. She tapped the edge of the envelope against her desk, then wrote a name on it in careful black ink. Facilities did not usually receive paper invitations to corporate galas. Her assistant carried the stack downstairs. The invitation came to Luke during the late shift. He was halfway through tracing a fault in an old lighting panel when the facilities supervisor stuck his head into the electrical room. "You made quite an impression upstairs," the man said, half joking, half wary. He held out the thick envelope between two fingers. "They are inviting you to the circus." Luke wiped his hands and took it. The paper felt heavy, richer than anything he usually touched at work. The front read, "Luke Ramirez" in looping script. He opened it. Inside, gold ink announced North Star's annual foundation gala with date, time, location, and dress code. "Fancy," the supervisor said. "You going to go rub shoulders with the people who sign your checks?" Luke looked at the card at the suggested attire at the donation tiers spelled out at the bottom. "It is next Friday," he said. "Yeah, big deal. They like having a few folks in uniform around. Makes things look connected." "Friday is pizza and movie night," Luke said. The supervisor rolled his eyes. "It is one night, Ramirez," he said. "Your kid will live. Take her Saturday." Luke slid the invitation back into its envelope. "She picked the movies in advance," he said. "We have a schedule." The supervisor shook his head, muttering something about priorities as he left. On his break, Luke sat at the small metal table in the maintenance break room and turned the invitation over in his hands. The card was crisp and white against the scuffed surface. A soda machine hummed in the corner behind him. He took a pen from his pocket and flipped the RSVP card to the side with the blank space. "Thank you for the invitation," he wrote in careful, blocky handwriting. "Unfortunately, I have a prior commitment. Friday nights are pizza and movie with my daughter." He hesitated, then added, "I am sure you understand." Madison read the note the next morning in her office. Her assistant had placed it on the desk with a handful of other papers, assuming it was part of the standard stack. The handwriting stood out among the typed memos and printed reports. She read it twice. "Friday nights are pizza and movie with my daughter." A corner of her mouth lifted not quite a smile, more a small admission to herself. She imagined the offers she had turned down over the years. Dinners, trips, parties, all in the name of work. Not once had she written anything that simple. She placed the card back on the desk, then after a moment slipped it into the top drawer instead of the recycling bin. That Friday, the city reined itself into a soft blur. Madison left the office later than she meant to. Meetings had stretched, emails had multiplied. When she finally stepped into the garage, her car waited gleaming and perfectly dry. She slid behind the wheel, started the silent engine, and pulled out into the wet streets. Her apartment was 20 minutes away in the other direction. At a red light, she turned instead. The neighborhoods changed as she drove south. Glass and steel gave way to brick and siding. The sidewalks narrowed. Neon signs flickered in the windows of small businesses that had no PR teams. She told herself she was just driving, clearing her head. The pizza place announced itself with a rectangle of yellow light on the corner. The sign over the door read, "Marco's in peeling red paint." A painted slice of pizza chomped a cartoon bite out of its own crust. She pulled into a spot across the street and killed the engine. Through the front window, she could see the whole room. 4 red vinyl booths, a counter with a glass display of pies, a television in the corner playing a game with the sound off. In the third booth, Mia sat on her knees, elbows on the table, hands moving in wild arcs as she told a story that clearly involved explosions or rockets. Glitter still clung to her eyelids in faint traces. The ribbon from robotics night was tied around her wrist. Across from her, Luke listened. He was not checking his phone. He was not glancing at the door. He was just there, fully in that booth, as if nowhere else in the city required his attention. Every time Mia said something particularly outrageous, he laughed. The lines at the corners of his eyes deepened, but the weight he carried at work lightened. A half-eaten pepperoni pizza sat between them. Mia grabbed a slice and pointed it like a prop as she talked. Luke stole one of her pepperoni rounds when she was not looking. She slapped his hand, giggling, then pretended to be outraged. Madison sat in the parked car and watched them, hands resting on the steering wheel, the wipers leaving clean arcs on the glass. She had attended more formal dinners than she could count. Events where people wore watches more expensive than most cars. Tables where laughter came half a second too late because everyone was calculating how much amusement they were supposed to show. This was not that. A delivery scooter splashed past, sending a spray of water across her windshield. The moment in the window blurred, then cleared again. She stayed until the pizza box on the table was empty, and Mia's head began to droop with tiredness between bites. Luke flagged the server, paid with crumpled bills and a card, and helped Mia into her jacket. When they stepped out into the rain, Mia hopped over puddles while Luke held the umbrella to cover more of her than him. They disappeared down the block toward a building she could not see from where she sat. Madison started the car and pulled away from the curb. She did not quite know what to do with the feeling in her chest. It was not envy, not exactly. It was something older and newer at once, a memory of a life she had glimpsed once from the edge of a doorway and then watched disappear. On Monday, she went to the maintenance break room. Her assistant tried to follow. Madison told her she wanted a few minutes without her, then walked down the stairs instead of taking the elevator. The break room was small and smelled of reheated food and coffee that had lingered too long on a burner. A vending machine buzzed in the corner next to a bulletin board, layered with outdated flyers. A long metal table sat in the middle, surrounded by mismatched chairs. Luke was there alone for once, a container of leftover pasta in front of him, and a worn paperback propped open beside it. The cover showed an electrical schematic and a title about advanced grid design. He looked up when she stepped in. For half a second, his hand froze with the fork halfway to his mouth. "Is this seat taken?" she asked. It was an absurd question. Every seat in the building was technically hers. He set the fork down, closed the book on one finger to hold his place, and gestured slightly with his free hand. "It is a free country," he said. She sat. The metal of the chair was colder than any in her usual meeting rooms. The silence stretched. Somewhere down the hall, a pipe clanged. The soda machine dropped a can with a hollow thud. "I wanted to apologize," she said. His eyebrows rose just enough to show he had not expected that. "For what?" he asked. "For the way I spoke to you in the operations room," she said. "For turning you into a spectacle. The bet. The kiss. It was demeaning. You deserved better." He studied her face. She held his gaze, resisting the urge to fill the space with more words. "Apology accepted," he said. No flourish, no lecture, just that. She let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. "How did robotics night go?" she asked. He blinked, surprised she knew the term. "Navigator won second place," he said, which was rigged because clearly he was the superior unit, but we have chosen to be gracious in defeat. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. It changed his face more than she expected. "Mia was happy," he added. "That is the metric that counts." Madison pressed her hands together on the table, fingers interlaced, so he would not see them fidget. "Your daughter is bright," she said, "from what I saw on the flyer, and from what you said." He tilted his head. "You read the flyer," he said. "I read everything with our logo on it," she said. Eventually, he nodded as if that made sense. For a moment they sat without speaking. It was not exactly comfortable, but it was not sharp either, more like standing near a seam in the floor and feeling the building settle around it. The door opened with a sudden shove. "Madison," a voice said, edged with surprise and displeasure. Charles Hale filled the doorway in a navy suit. His tie loosened half an inch in what passed for casual. He took in the scene in one sweep. His daughter at a metal table. A man in a maintenance shirt across from her. A plastic container of pasta between them. "What are you doing down here?" he asked. His tone turned the question into something closer to an accusation. Madison straightened. "Having lunch?" she said. "In a break room," he said. His gaze flicked to Luke, then back to her. "With staff." "With an employee," she said. "Yes." Luke closed his book fully now, tucking it into his bag. He rose from the chair. "I was just leaving," he said. "You are fine," Madison said quickly. Her father looked at Luke as if assessing a piece of equipment. "Ramirez," he said, recalling the name from the incident report he had definitely read, despite telling no one he cared that much about technical details. "The man who crawled into our generator." "Sir," Luke said. Charles did not offer a hand. "Thank you for your service," he said. The words came out in a way that might have been sincere once somewhere, but now sounded practiced. Then he looked at Madison. "A moment," he said. It was not a request. She stood. To Luke she added quietly, "Enjoy the rest of your lunch." He inclined his head, eyes giving away nothing he did not want them to. In the hallway, as the door swung shut behind them, the air cooled a few degrees. "You do not eat in break rooms," Charles said in a low voice. "You do not linger with maintenance staff. You are the chief executive of this company, not a shift supervisor." "They work for me," she said. "I thought I should know at least one of their names." His jaw tightened. "I saw the footage," he said. "From the garage, you kissing him." Her spine went stiff. "Security reports are supposed to be limited to actual threats," she said. "Everything is a threat if it can be used," he answered. "You are playing close with a man who has every reason to see this building as a ladder." "He turned down a gala invitation," she said. "That is not much of a ladder." Charles snorted softly. "That just means he knows how to look principled," he said. "Your mother used to think men like that were romantic." The mention of her mother in this hallway outside a break room that still smelled like tomato sauce hit with surgical precision. "We are not having this conversation here," she said. "No," he said. "We are not." He glanced back at the closed door, then at her, and his voice dropped further. "And whatever this is," he said, "before it makes you look small." Then he turned and walked away, leaving her standing between the world she had been raised in and the one she had briefly stepped into, the scent of reheated pasta still hanging in the air. Madison did not answer her father in the hallway. There was nothing to say that would not open an older wound. She watched him walk away toward the executive elevators, polished shoes clicking on polished floor, and for a moment she saw herself at 16 standing in a different hall while he told her what image they would present at a funeral. And whatever this is, the door to the break room behind her still smelled like pasta and overworked coffee. Luke was on the other side of it, going back to his paperback and his lunch, probably already filing the encounter under things that did not concern him. She went back upstairs, back to glass and chrome, and the top of a tower that no one else called home. The flyer for the district science fair sat on her desk 3 days before the event. It had arrived in the daily stack of internal memos. North Star's logo appeared at the bottom as a minor sponsor. Someone in marketing had approved a small donation in exchange for brand placement and a mention on a banner. To the company, it was a line item. To Madison, it was an accidental invitation. Jefferson Elementary Annual Science and Engineering Fair, Saturday 10 a.m. Community welcome. She stared at the words longer than the budget figures beside them. Her calendar already had a block of gray over that morning. Review notes, investor follow-up. The kind of work that could be done at any hour if she was honest. She clicked the block and dragged it to the afternoon. Saturday morning, she stood in front of her closet with a kind of hesitation she did not recognize. Her regular uniform of sharp suits and structured dresses looked wrong. After a minute, she chose dark jeans, a navy sweater, and a jacket that had not seen an office in years. In the mirror, she looked like a softer version of herself. Less North Star, more Madison. The school gym buzzed when she arrived. Handwritten posters pointed the way from the parking lot. Inside, trifold display boards lined long tables, titles written in varying degrees of confidence. The smell of markers, cardboard, and kid sweat mixed with the faint tang of popcorn from a fundraiser stand. Parents filled the edges of the room, clutching coffee cups and phones. Kids darted between exhibits, explaining rockets, volcanoes, plant experiments to anyone who would listen. She spotted him before he saw her. Luke stood near the middle of the gym in a clean button-down shirt, with the sleeves rolled up, no logo on his chest. Mia bounced beside him, holding a cardboard sign that read Navigator 2.0 in uneven letters. Their display board showed printed pictures of the robot in different stages of assembly. Wires, breadboards, a diagram of how the sensors mapped to space. Navigator himself sat on the table, shiny, with a few new parts. Madison hesitated near the doorway. She could turn around, slip back into the stream of parents, and leave before anyone noticed she had been there. This was not her world. She did not know the rules. Mia spotted her. Her eyes widened. She said something rapid to Luke and then took off across the gym floor, ponytail swinging. "Ms. Hale," she called too loud for the space. Several heads turned. "You came." Madison's first instinct was to correct her. "It is Madison, not Ms. Hale." The second instinct overrode it. "You invited me," she said. Mia nodded so hard that the ribbon on her ponytail bounced. "I told Dad you would be too busy," she said. "But he said busy people get to choose what they are busy with. Is that true?" "It can be," Madison said. "Then you chose us," Mia said matter-of-factly, and reached for her hand. Her small fingers were warm and a little sticky. Madison let herself be towed across the gym. Luke watched them approach, something like surprise mixed with caution in his expression. "You clean up nice," he said when she stopped in front of him. His tone made it clear he meant the jeans and sweater, not that she had been a mess before. "You look different without a badge," she said. "Less likely to be asked to reset a breaker." Mia tugged on Madison's sleeve. "Can we show her?" she demanded. "Show her," Luke said. Mia dragged Madison behind the table and pointed to the board, launching into a well-rehearsed explanation of how Navigator 2.0 was smarter than his predecessor. Her hands moved in quick arcs as she described mapping algorithms and sensor sweeps. Madison listened. She had heard grown engineers sell billion-dollar systems with less clarity. Mia's voice wobbled only once when she glanced out at the judges making their way down the row. Luke rested a hand lightly on her shoulder. The contact steadied her. When it was their turn, a panel of 3 adults approached with clipboards. One was a science teacher from another school. One wore a city department badge. The third had a North Star lanyard. Madison recognized him from the engineering division. He did a small double-take when he saw her standing there. "Visiting in a personal capacity," she said before he could say her name. "Of course," he said, adjusting his glasses. Mia ran through her presentation. Navigator performed with only one minor hiccup, bumping into a chair leg before correcting course. The judges asked questions about how she had programmed the branching logic. She answered with a mix of memorized phrases and genuine understanding. When they moved on, Mia sagged with relief and grinned up at Luke and Madison. "I did not forget any words," she said. "You did great," Luke said. Madison found herself nodding. "Your explanation of pathfinding was clear," she said. "A lot of people older than you could not do that." Mia preened. "Did you ever make a robot?" she asked. "No," Madison said. I made a lot of spreadsheets. That sounds boring, Mia said. It often is. Luke snorted under his breath. Madison let it pass without comment. Awards were handed out an hour later. The whole gym gathered as names were called. Posters shifted. Chairs squeaked. Parents craned their necks. Navigator took second place in the engineering category. Mia's eyes went wide when her name was read. Luke whooped loud and unself-conscious. Madison clapped until her palms tingled. On the small makeshift podium, Mia stood between a boy whose baking soda volcano had wowed the crowd and a girl whose wind turbine prototype spun in a homemade breeze. A ribbon went around her neck. A volunteer took a photo for the school newsletter. Afterward, in the slow chaos of packing displays and collecting lost jackets, Luke found Madison near the door. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Thank you for not telling me not to," she answered. He shrugged. "Not my gym," he said. "You are welcome in this one." Mia appeared between them like a spark. "Can she come to pizza?" she asked, holding up the ribbon as if it were proof of some new status. Luke glanced at Madison, then back at his daughter. "Maybe another time," he said gently. "I think Ms. Hale has things to do today." "Work," Mia said, disappointed but accepting. "Work," Madison confirmed. It was only half true. For once, work was not the thing pulling at her the hardest. She watched them leave, Mia hopping from tile to tile to avoid imaginary lava, Luke steady beside her. A parent she did not know brushed past and said, "Excuse me," without recognition. It felt almost like anonymity. Outside, the daylight was thin. The school's fluorescent hallway light spilled onto the sidewalk in a rectangle. Madison paused at the threshold, then stepped through. The building was quiet the night Mia got sick. Most of the staff had left hours before. The last of the event crews had packed up the remaining banners and lighting after the launch week frenzy. There were no journalists in the atrium now, no staged applause, only the echo of her own footsteps as Madison crossed the marble. It was just after 8. She had stayed late going over a new set of projections her father wanted before morning. The numbers had blurred an hour ago. She was reviewing for the sake of motion more than clarity. She was almost to the elevator when she heard it. A cough, high-pitched raw, then a small sound that might have been a whimper. It came from the direction of the service corridor. She frowned. Cleaning crews did not bring their children. Security guards occasionally had a teenager waiting in the lobby at the end of a shift, but that sound had something younger in it. Curiosity pushed where habit would have turned away. She followed the sound down the corridor, past the supply closet and the utility room, to the open door of the maintenance office. Inside, the harsh fluorescent light made everything look sharper than it was. A battered couch hugged one wall. On it, Mia lay curled on her side, cheeks flushed, hair damp around her forehead. A thin blanket covered her to the shoulders. She coughed again, a deep rattling noise that seemed too big for her small chest. Luke knelt beside the couch. He held a digital thermometer in one hand and a small bottle of children's fever reducer in the other. His face was drawn tight the way it had been in the generator enclosure, but this time, the worry had no metal to transfer into action. He looked up when Madison stepped into the doorway. Her first instinct was apology, as if she had walked into a room she did not own. "What happened?" she asked instead. "Mia, say hi," Luke said awfully. Mia's eyes fluttered open. The green looked paler against the redness of her face. "Hi," she whispered. Then with a tiny ghost of her usual directness, "Are you the pretty lady from Dad's work?" Madison blinked. "I am Madison," she said. "You look miserable." "I threw up," Mia said. "Twice." "That sounds like a rough evening." Luke set the thermometer on the table. The numbers on the display still glowed. "Fever came on fast," he said. "The sitter called. I picked her up, but I am out of sick days and overtime. I did not want to leave in the middle of a system patch, so she is here until I can clock out." There was apology in his tone, but not for bringing Mia, for the way the world was arranged. Madison crossed the room and knelt on the other side of the couch. She rested the back of her hand lightly against Mia's forehead. Her skin was hot and damp. The heat made the contrast with the cool office air starker. "Have you called her doctor?" Madison asked. "Clinic said to monitor and bring her in if it spikes higher," Luke said. "They can see her tomorrow. Tonight it is rest and fluids." Madison looked around the room. A coffee maker sat on a counter, a half-empty bottle of water, a handful of mismatched mugs. Nowhere a child should spend the night. "She should be in a bed," Madison said. "Working on it," Luke said. "Another 30 minutes and I am off, then 3 bus transfers and 4 flights of stairs." Mia coughed again, her eyes squeezed shut. "You are not driving?" Madison said. Luke spread his hands helplessly. My truck has opinions in the rain, he said. I did not bring it today, and the bus is cheaper anyway. Get her things, Madison said. He frowned. What? Her backpack, her jacket. Madison rose. My car is 10 seconds from the elevator. The back seat folds down. The heater works. We will take you home. You do not have to do that, he said. You have already had a long day. So has she, Madison said. Mia watched them both breathing shallowly. Your car is the one that was dirty, she rasped. It is clean now, Madison said, thanks to your dad. Then I like your car, Mia said. Luke looked between them, then sighed. You are not going to let this go, are you? He said. No, Madison said. Stubborn, he said. So I have been told. He fetched Mia's small backpack from under the table. Madison lifted the child gently. Mia was lighter than she looked, all bones and heat and limp arms. She tucked her face against Madison's shoulder without complaint. In the elevator, the three of them made a strange reflection. The CEO in casual clothes, the maintenance tech with worry etched into his features, the feverish child nestled between them. Outside, the rain had eased to a mist. Madison's car beeped as she unlocked it. The interior light blinked on, soft and controlled. She eased Mia into the back seat and buckled her in. Luke climbed into the passenger side after a moment's hesitation. The wipers swished in a steady rhythm as they pulled away from the tower. Seattle looked different from this angle. Wet streets, taillights, red on the blacktop storefronts sliding past with their neon half-lit. Madison's hands were steady on the wheel. She drove more slowly than usual, aware of every pothole. Mia mumbled once from the back. Dad? I am here, kiddo, Luke said, twisting halfway in his seat. Feels like camping, she said dreamily. A tent that moves. Her words slurred sleep, dragging them out of shape. Go back to sleep, he said. Navigator is on guard duty at home. She sighed and settled. They reached his building in South Seattle 20 minutes later. 3 stories of aging brick windows, glowing warm in scattered squares. The entryway smelled faintly of old paint and someone else's dinner. I can carry her, Luke said as they parked. You have enough to carry, Madison dusted. She lifted Mia again. The child hooked her arms around Madison's neck in the instinctive way kids do when they trust they will not be dropped. On the stairs, Madison's breath came shorter by the second flight. She was fit enough, but the combination of extra weight and the unfamiliar angle of the stairwell made her legs ache. She did not complain. Luke unlocked the apartment door and swung it open. Warm light spilled out. The space was small, a couch with a worn throw, a low table covered in robot parts and homework sheets. The kitchen area carried the faint aroma of something cooked earlier in the week. Drawings covered the refrigerator, rockets, circuits, stick figures holding hands. Madison carried Mia to the small bedroom and laid her on the bed. Luke pulled a clean t-shirt over her head and eased her into pajama pants with little planets printed on them. He handed Madison a washcloth dampened with cool water. Together they wiped Mia's face and hands, smoothing hair back from her forehead. There, Madison said softly. Much better than a couch. Mia's eyes opened just enough to focus on her. You are the pretty lady from Dad's work, she said again as if confirming a hypothesis. I guess I am, Madison said. You sound different here, Mia murmured. Different from where? From TV. Madison blinked. You watch TV about grids, Luke said, trying to keep his voice light. They put you on the news, Mia said to Madison. With the big grid, you talk like a robot there. I will take that under advisement, Madison said. Mia gave a tiny huff that might have been a laugh, then closed her eyes. They stood there for a moment, listening to her breathing even out. Luke stepped back first. I will make coffee, he said. It is not some $20 roast, but it will keep us upright. In this apartment, Madison said, I am not in a position to be picky. He glanced at her, surprised by the admission, then nodded. In the small kitchen, he filled a kettle, scooped generic grounds into a chipped pour-over cone, and talked her through the layout of the apartment while the water heated. She leaned against the counter watching. That wall is load-bearing, he said. I asked the landlord once if he had ever thought about opening it up. He said he had not thought about this building since the 80s. Charming, she said. It holds, Luke said. Sometimes that is enough. He poured the water in slow circles. The smell of coffee spread through the room, familiar and grounding. On the wall above the table hung 3 framed photographs. In one, a younger Luke in uniform stood on a tarmac beside a giant plain sun, blasting the colors to near white. In another, he and a woman in a simple white dress laughed at something off camera, his hand on her waist, her veil blown sideways. In the third, he held a newborn bundled in a hospital blanket, his face split by a smile so wide it made him look like a different man. Madison drifted closer to the frames drawn without quite deciding to be. "Is that Mia's mother?" she asked, nodding toward the wedding photo. "It was," he said. He did not elaborate. "And now," she said carefully, "now she is someone who sends postcards from somewhere warmer when she remembers she has a daughter," he said. "Mia does not remember much. Just that at some point it was the two of us, and that is how it has stayed." He handed her a mug. Their fingers brushed briefly. His were still warm from the kettle. "Isabella left a note," he said. 6 words. "I cannot do this. I am sorry. I spent a long time trying to figure out what this was. Me, her, all of it. Then I had to learn to build something that worked with what was left." Madison wrapped both hands around the mug. "My mother left a note too," she said. He looked at her waiting. "Love is a liability," Madison recited. "She wrote it on nice stationery. My father has never stopped treating it like a mission statement." The words hung in the small kitchen, heavy as the rain outside. "That is a hell of a thing to leave a kid with," Luke said. "It was not addressed to me," Madison said. "It might as well have been." They stood there, two people who had grown up in very different houses, holding mugs from the same cabinet bound by sentences written by people who had walked away in different directions. From the bedroom, Mia coughed once, then settled again. The night deepened around them. The apartment's thin walls carried the faint sounds of neighbors living parallel lives. Luke leaned his hip against the counter. "Whatever she meant by that line," he said, "it says more about who she chose than about love itself." Madison stared into her coffee. "I have spent 18 years making decisions like I was allergic to needing anyone," she said. "It has worked, mostly." "Has it?" he asked. She did not answer immediately. The lamp above the table cast a soft circle of light. Outside the window, the city was a smear of wet color. Inside, the small space felt oddly steady. She took a breath. "I do not know," she said. Luke did not rush to fill the space after her admission. "I do not know." The kettle clicked as it cooled. The building creaked in some distant joint. In the bedroom, Mia shifted and muttered something about rockets. "Not knowing is underrated," he said eventually. "Most of the bad calls I have seen came from people convinced they had it all figured out." "You sound like you have watched a lot of bad calls," Madison said. "More than I wanted," he answered. He rinsed his mug in the sink and set it upside down to dry. When he turned back, she was watching him, the mug still cupped in her hands, as if she needed the small weight. "You know your father will have an opinion about this," he said. "About coffee," she said. "About you sitting in a 2-bedroom walk-up in South Seattle with a maintenance tech and his kid." She looked around the apartment. Nothing in it would show up in a glossy spread. Everything in it looked used and necessary. "He usually does," she said. "He will not like it," Luke said. "He already did not like you in my break room. There will be a cost." There it was, the thing hanging in the air since the night in the garage, given shape finally. "I am not asking you to pay it," he added. "I am saying he will make sure someone does." "You are trying to warn me," she said. He leaned back against the counter, arms crossed. "I am trying to make sure you are not surprised when a man like that behaves like a man like that," he said. A corner of her mouth twitched. "You have him pegged fast for someone who has never sat in a board meeting with him," she said. "I have sat in other meetings with other men who own things," he said. "The uniforms change, the posture does not." She could have pushed back, defended Charles as more complicated, more wounded, more anything. The words did not come. "Take the couch," he said. "You should not drive back across town like this. I will grab a blanket. In the morning we will see if Mia's fever breaks, and you can go back to your tower." He said back to your tower without judgment, just a direction. She glanced toward the bedroom, where a small nightlight cast a soft glow. "You are sure?" she asked. "I have seen worse house guests," he said. "Most of them snore more." Dawn came thin and gray through the blinds. Mia's fever had dropped a notch. She slept deeply, breathing less raggedly. Luke checked her temperature twice more from habit than concern now. Madison stood in the doorway, hair mussed from the couch sweater wrinkled. She had never looked less like her own press photos. "I should go," she said. "You should shower," he said. "But I guess you will have someone at the office tell you that instead." She gave him a look that might have been annoyance if not for the small smile hiding at the edge. He walked her to the door. On the threshold she hesitated. "Thank you," she said, "for last night." "Thank you for the ride," he said, "and for carrying a 40-pound space heater up 3 flights of stairs." She laughed once quietly. "Do not tell anyone," she said. "It will ruin my image." He opened the door for her. In the hallway, the air was cooler, less flavored by coffee and life. As she stepped out, he spoke again. "Madison." She turned. "He will come after this," Luke said. "Your father. in whatever way men like him do. Make sure you are doing what you are doing because you choose it, not because you are reacting to him. She looked at him for a long second, the words landing somewhere between her chest and her throat. Take care of your daughter, she said. That is the plan, he answered. She walked down the stairs, each step carrying her back toward the other version of herself. He watched until the front door closed behind her. Charles came 2 weeks later. He did not announce his visit. He never did. Madison found him already in her kitchen when she stepped into the penthouse, as if he had grown there out of glass and stone. Spare key is for emergencies, she said, dropping her bag on the console. This is one, he said. He sat at the island, a tumbler of water in front of him. Not whiskey. That was not a good sign. A manila envelope lay beside the glass. The flap closed, the string wound tight. Madison shrugged out of her coat. What did we lose? She asked Thord. An investor, a director, a market cap point. He tapped the envelope. You, he said. The room tilted in some internal way. She did not let it show. What is that? She asked. A reminder, he said, of where you come from and where you seem set on going if you are not careful. He unwound the string and slid the contents out onto the marble. Photographs fanned across the counter. Some were grainy, taken from distance. Some were painfully clear. Madison at the science fair, standing behind a table, with a small girl and a robot jeans and sweater, and a look on her face she did not recognize from any mirror. Madison sitting in a vinyl booth at a pizza place laughing at something off-frame. Madison walking up the stairs of a brick building, behind Luke who carried a sleeping child. Her throat went dry. How did you get these? She asked. How do you think? He said. It is not difficult to follow an executive with a security detail built into the system she herself approved. She picked up one of the photos. Her own profile looked softer, brow unfurrowed, eyes on Mia. She set it down as if it might burn her fingers. You hired someone to watch me, she said. I hired someone to make sure the CEO of my company is not compromising the brand, he said. What I saw was my daughter playing house with a contractor in a building that does not even have a doorman. Anger flashed quick and bright. His name is Luke, she said, and that building is where his kid sleeps. His kid, Charles said, who very conveniently gives him access to your soft spots. She stepped back as if she had been physically pushed. You are seeing ghosts, she said. He turned down a gala invitation. Which makes him look principled, Charles said. Men like that are dangerous, Madison. They convince you they are above the game while they play it better than anyone. They see not you, but the door you are. To money, to power, to a life they have not earned. She gripped the edge of the counter. The cold stone bit into her palms. You do not know him, she said. I know you, he said. I watched your mother chase the idea of a man who saw her, not the name on the building. She believed love made her free. It made her stupid. It made her dead. The words landed with deadly calm. He is not my father, she said. No, Charles said. He is worse because at least your father has money of his own. The old switch flicked in her chest. The one that had turned on when she found the note on the bathroom floor. The one that had lit up every time she had chosen work over anything that might look like needing someone. What is it you want? She asked, her voice quieter. I want you to remember who you are, he said, and what you have built. I want you to end whatever this is before it leaks into places we cannot control. She looked down at the pictures again, at the little girl with the ribbon, at the man with tired hands who had crawled into a generator, at herself unarmored. It is nothing, she said. It was coffee, a school fare, a sick night. It is more than enough, he said. Say you understand. She closed her eyes. In the dark behind her lids, she saw Mia's fever-flushed face, the way the child had relaxed into her arms without question. She saw Luke at the break room table, accepting her apology with a simple nod. She saw her mother's handwriting, the graceful letters forming cruel words. Love is a liability. I understand, she said. Good, he said. He gathered the photographs back into the envelope and stood. It was a mistake, she added, the words tasting like stone. It will not happen again. His shoulders relaxed by a degree. That is my girl, he said. The words did not land the way he intended. After he left, she stood alone in the kitchen. The city glittered below the windows. The hum of the building surrounded her, steady and indifferent. She opened the top drawer of a small side table. The RSVP card from Luke's gala invitation sat there, the line about pizza and movies in his blocky handwriting. She sat on the floor and tore the card in half, then into quarters, then into pieces so small the words disappeared. Avoiding someone in a building designed by your company turned out to be harder than it should have been. Madison tried. She stopped yet taking the stairs when she could help it. She used different elevator banks. She sent emails instead of making in-person rounds. When she did have to pass through the operations floor, she kept her eyes on the screens, not the people. It worked in the same way a patch works on a cracked pipe. For a while, the leak was slower. The pressure, however, did not go away. Luke noticed before she said anything. He noticed the way her gaze slid past him when they crossed paths in the lobby. The way her visits to the maintenance areas simply stopped. The way she shifted in a meeting with department heads so that someone else sat between them at the table. He adjusted in return. Polite, professional, nothing more. In the maintenance office, the other techs had opinions. Some thought he had overstepped. Some thought she was playing a longer game. He let them talk. None of them knew about a sick night on a couch or coffee in a small kitchen. At home, Mia kept asking when Ms. Hale could come over again. "We do not mix work and home too much," Luke said. "It gets confusing." "She does not look confused," Mia said. "She looks like she knows all the answers." "Nobody does," he said, "but she looks like it." He had no real answer to that. The call came on a Tuesday. Madison was passing the open door of the maintenance office on her way to a meeting she did not want to attend when she heard Luke's voice softer than his usual work tone. "Hey, kiddo," he said. "You are on speaker. I am at work." Mia's voice came faintly through the line, high and earnest. "Okay," she said. "Can you ask Madison something for me?" Madison stopped in the hall just out of sight. "You can ask me something for you," Luke said. "What is up?" "Can she come to my birthday?" Mia said. "We are doing Build Your Own Sunday and playing movies. I want her to see Navigator's new code." I wrote an if-else without help. Silence. It lasted just long enough for Madison's stomach to tighten. "Mia," Luke said finally. His voice had that careful edge parents use when they are deciding how much truth a child can carry. "I do not think that is a good idea." "Why?" she asked. "You like her. She likes us. She carried me. She stayed." Madison's throat burned. "Sometimes grown-ups have to draw lines between parts of their lives," Luke said. "It is not about you. It is about making sure things stay safe." "Safe from what?" Mia asked. "From getting tangled," he said. "That is not a thing," Mia said. "You made that up." "A little," he admitted. "You always tell me when something is broken we fix it," she said. "We do not throw it away." "Sometimes we let things sit for a while before we decide if they are broken," he said. There was a pause. Madison could almost see Mia's face through the phone, scrunched in thought. "So she is not coming," Mia said. "I do not think she is," Luke said quietly. "Zidi sen wire tories." "Okay," Mia said. The okay sounded small. "Can you at least tell her I said hi?" "I can do that," he said. Madison stepped back, her heels soundless on the carpet, and walked to the elevator in the opposite direction. In the meeting, she spoke about projected growth and regulatory frameworks with an even voice. On the inside, something had started to tear. The rain returned on a Thursday, full and hard. By 9 that night, only a handful of cars remained in the executive garage. Water drummed on the concrete ceiling. The fluorescent lights made halos in the mist near the entrance. Madison left her office later than usual, the numbers on her screen refusing to align into anything that looked like sense. Her eyes ached. Her shoulders felt carved. In the garage, she unlocked her car and hesitated before getting in. A sound carried from deeper inside. The grind of an engine that did not want to turn over. A cough, then a thin cry. She followed it. Near the far wall, Luke's truck sat at a slant nose slightly out of the space. The hood was up. Luke leaned over the engine's shoulders, hunched shirt, already soaking through with rain that had blown in from the open entrance. Mia sat in the passenger seat wrapped in a too-thin jacket, coughing into the crook of her arm. The engine coughed again, then fell silent. Luke thumped the side of the truck with the heel of his hand, more in frustration than hope. "You are supposed to wait until we get home to die," he said under his breath. Mia's cough turned into a small wheeze. Madison stood there for a moment, half in shadow, watching. The line her father had drawn was clear in her mind. End whatever this is. She had walked it faithfully for weeks. She had stayed away. She had let the silence harden. Another cough from inside the cab. It cut shorter, more painful. Something inside her refused. She walked forward, heels splashing in shallow puddles, rain spotting her coat. Luke heard the footsteps and straightened. His face went through surprise into something more guarded. "Car trouble," she said. "Just encouraging him to live a little longer," Luke said. His hair stuck to his forehead in dark strands. "He is not listening." His eyes flicked to Mia. The girl's face was pale under the parking lot lights, with two bright spots of color on her cheeks that did not look like health. She is sick again, Madison said. Fever came back this afternoon, he said. Clinic said it is a virus. Hydrate, rest. I was trying to get her home before the cough turned nuclear. Bus, Madison said. She cannot keep her head up, he said. I am not dragging her through transfers like this. Then stop trying to resurrect this thing in the rain, she said. Get her out. Madison, he began. Get her out, she repeated. He held her gaze for a second, the garage noise filling the space between them. The engines ticking the rain on the roof, the distant whoosh of a car on the street. Then he nodded. He went around to the passenger side, opened the door, and lifted Mia into his arms. She clung to his neck, her breathing harsh in the quiet. Madison opened the back door of her car. Put her here, she said. He did. Mia's eyes opened a slit. Hi, she whispered. Hey, navigator, Madison said. Rough night. Robots do not get sick, Mia said. Good thing you are not a robot, Madison said. Yet, Mia murmured, echoing her earlier joke, and let her head fall against the seat. Luke climbed into the front. For a heartbeat, they sat in a shared silence. You do not have to keep doing this, he said. You are right, she said. I do not. She started the car. The streets were slick and nearly empty. The wipers traced their steady arc. In the back, Mia coughed in small bursts, each one quieter than the last, as exhaustion pulled her toward sleep. Why did you stop coming around? Luke asked, his voice low. Did I get you in trouble? She kept her eyes on the road. My father hired someone to follow me, she said. He had pictures, science fair, pizza, your stairs. He exhaled slowly. Of course he did, he said. He told me I was making myself small, she said. That you saw a staircase, not a person. That I was replaying my mother's choices with worse taste. That is a lot of projection for one conversation, Luke said. He is good at fitting everything into his narrative, she said. And you believed him. I believed I could not afford to prove him right, she said. At my expense, he said. The words were not a question. They turned onto his street. The brick building loomed ahead, windows glowing in the rain. She parked, cut the engine, and sat there with her hands still on the wheel. I tried to end it, she said. We did not start anything, he said. That was the problem. She turned to face him fully. I have spent my whole life building a world where I do not need anyone, she said. You told me that night in your kitchen that the line my mother left said more about who she chose than about love itself. I have not been able to stop thinking about that. He looked at her, really looked as if measuring something he had not allowed himself to before. Madison, he said softly. There was warning in it, and something else. You were right, she said, about my father, about how he would react, about the cost. She reached for the door handle. Come on, she said. She should not sleep in the car. Upstairs, the apartment felt the same as it had on the sick night. Warm, cluttered, alive. They settled Mia into bed with practiced motions. Luke checked her temperature, nodded, when the number on the thermometer did not climb. He set a glass of water on the crate that served as a nightstand and placed Navigator in his usual post on the dresser. You call me if you need anything, Madison said to Mia, even though the girl was already 3/4 asleep. Okay, Mia mumbled. They stepped back into the small living room. The door to Mia's room stayed ajar, letting a strip of light spill across the carpet. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rain tapped on the window. The radiator hissed softly. Somewhere above them, a neighbor laughed at something on television. Luke broke the silence. Why are you here? He asked. The question came out more tired than accusatory. He leaned against the back of the couch, arms folded, as if he needed the support. I just told you, she said. You told me why you stopped, he said, not why you started again. She crossed her arms too, more to keep her hands still than out of defense. Because I was wrong, she said. He waited. I thought I was protecting myself, she said, from the way people leave, from needing anyone, from becoming a story my father could use. And now, he asked, now I am standing in an apartment that would never show up on my company website and realizing it is the first place in a long time that feels like it has room for me in it, she said. His jaw tightened slightly. Madison, he said. There was more warning in it now. You have a life that works. It is cold sometimes, sure, but it is stable. I am a guy with a kid and a truck that dies in the rain. Your father is right about one thing. My world and yours do not naturally mix. Maybe they are not supposed to mix, she said. Maybe they are supposed to meet. That is a pretty sentence, as he said. It does not pay rent. You think this is about charity? she said, flaring. I think it is about you walking into something that will strip you down to nothing if you are not ready, he said. Your father will not just scowl at a wedding. He will come for jobs, for contracts, for schools, for custody hearings if it gets that far. Men like that like to make examples. Do you not think I know what he is capable of? She said. I think you have spent a lot of years outrunning that knowledge, he said. She took a step closer. Do you want me here? She asked. The directness of it seemed to take him off guard. That is not the point, he said. It is exactly the point, she said, because I am very tired of my father being the point of every decision I make. He studied her face. The anger there was fresh, but under it was something older, more raw. You are not the only one with something to lose, he said. I know, she said. Mia, your job, your name, I am not pretending those are small things. Then why stand here? He asked. Because I am falling in love with you, she said. The words came out steady. And because pretending I am not does not make that less true. It just makes me cowardly. The room seemed to narrow around them. You barely know me, he said. I know you crawl into hot metal boxes when everyone else is scrambling for excuses, she said. I know you give half your lunch to a man in an army jacket who calls you Ramirez like you are still on a roster. I know you turn down a table full of powerful people for pizza with your kid. Those are selected highlights, he said. They are enough to tell me the rest is worth finding out, she said. His hands curled into his own sleeves. This could wreck you, he said. Your position, your company, your relationship with your father if that still matters. Maybe it is not my position that is wreckable, she said. Maybe it is the story I have been telling myself about what I am allowed to want. Her voice dropped. I am tired, Luke, she said. Not from work, from being made of glass. He looked toward Mia's room, the thin line of light across the floor. If we do this, he said slowly, she is in it. There is no version of my life that does not include her in the blast radius. I know, Madison said. She is the part that scares me in the right way. In the right way, he echoed. Because I do not want to be the person who walks through a kid's life and disappears when it gets complicated, she said. I had enough of that from adults who were supposed to stay. Something in his shoulders gave. You really do not make this easy, he said. You told me you like difficult, she said softly. Ambitious, worth working for. He huffed a sound that might have been the start of a laugh, or a surrender, or both. This will not be simple, he said. I do not trust simple, she answered. For a moment they stood the distance between them measured in worn carpet fibers and years of habit. Then he crossed it. He stopped close enough that she could see the faint stubble on his jaw, the lines of fatigue and something else around his eyes. Last chance to take the tower, he said quietly. She reached up and took his hand. I am choosing the apartment, she said. He cupped her face in both hands, fingers rough and careful, as if she were something both fragile and tougher than anyone realized. When he kissed her, there was no audience, no bet, no cameras, just the taste of coffee and rain and a kind of relief neither of them had planned for. In the next room, the nightlight glowed. Navigator's small indicator blinked. Outside, the city's grid held steady feeding light into a brick building where for the first time in a long time, someone at the top of the tower had chosen to stand at the bottom instead. The weeks after that night did not fall into a neat pattern, but something like a rhythm began to form. Madison still arrived at North Star before sunrise most days. She still sat in glass rooms with people who spoke in projections and market share. She still signed off on budgets that would never feel real to anyone who lived in Luke's building. The difference lived in the spaces between. On Tuesday mornings, she sometimes stopped for coffee at a place 3 blocks from the tower, then carried a second cup to the maintenance workshop, with no official reason to be there. She would stand beside Luke while he finished showing a junior tech how to trace a fault, their shoulders almost touching the smell of metal and cleaner and coffee mixing in the air. Once a week on nights when Mia did not have homework that needed a parent at the table, Luke brought her downtown for an early dinner. They would meet Madison in a small diner 2 blocks away from the tower, the kind of place with laminated menus and cracked vinyl seats. Mia would slide into a booth and fill the paper plasmid with diagrams of imaginary machines, while Luke and Madison talked about city budgets and transformer failures over grilled cheese. On Fridays, pizza and movie night continued. Sometimes Madison joined them. The first time she did, she arrived in jeans and a sweatshirt, the collar of a tailored shirt peeking out. She sat on the floor with her back against the couch, because Mia said that was the best spot for seeing the whole television. They watched a film about a girl who befriends a robot. At one point, without thinking, Mia leaned against Madison's side instead of Luke's. For a heartbeat, his chest tightened. Then he saw the way Madison's hand hovered unsure before resting lightly on the child's hair, and something in him eased. They did not announce anything to anyone. In the halls at North Star, they passed like any CEO and any member of staff. He said "ma'am" in front of a bunch of others. She gave him the same brief nod she gave other people in blue shirts. Their real conversations lived in stairwells, in quiet corners of the parking garage, in text messages that arrived at odd hours. They fought too. When Mia needed new shoes and the clinic bill arrived on the same day Madison offered to pay, Luke refused without much thought. Offers turned into arguments about pride and power, about what help meant when there was a history of unequal footing. "This is not a project," he said one night in her kitchen, both of them standing on polished concrete that did not hold the day's scuffs the way his apartment did. "You do not get to fix my life as a side effect of working on yours." "I am not trying to fix your life," she said. "I am trying to be in it." Being in it meant learning how to sit at a folding chair in a school auditorium without looking like she wanted to read the budget for the district. It meant standing next to him in line at a pharmacy where no one recognized her listening while he argued with a clerk over the CO pay for an inhaler. Being in hers meant Luke learning which fork went with which course at a dinner he did not want to attend in the first place. It meant him telling her late one night that she did in fact have the right to not answer her phone if her father called. "If he needs something that cannot wait until morning, he has a whole company," Luke said. "You are not a fire alarm." She said nothing, but the next time Charles called after 11, she let it ring twice before sending it to voicemail. December brought frost to the edges of windows and string lights to the city. North Star's annual holiday gala landed on the second Friday of the month, the one date circled 3 times on the event's calendar. It was a fundraiser, a victory lap, and a theater piece all at once. The venue was a hotel ballroom with chandeliers the size of small cars. Staff in black supported the illusion of effortlessness. Outside, the rain had turned to a fine, cold mist that clung to coats and hair. For the guests, the night meant tuxedos and gowns, champagne, and a band playing songs everyone knew the words to. For the facilities team, it meant extra hours, emergency repairs, and standing in the shadows, making sure no one noticed the work. Luke had been scheduled to cover the hotel's back-of-house systems and coordinate with the hotel engineers. The assignment came through his supervisor with a shrug. "Holiday time and a half," the man said. "Could be worse." Luke ironed his one good dress shirt and borrowed a tie from a neighbor. He spent half an hour explaining to Mia why he could not bring her. "It is not that kind of party," he said. "There will be speeches, and no pizza." "Sounds terrible," she said. "You should stay home and watch movies instead." "Tell that to North Star payroll," he answered. Mia drew a little robot in the corner of his shirt collar with a washable marker before he left. "For courage," she said. At the hotel, he entered through the service corridor. The back hallways hummed with activity. Servers balanced trays, a sound technician cursed at a cable. The air smelled of rosemary from the kitchen and industrial cleaner from the loading dock. Luke checked the control panels, ran through the checklist with the hotel engineer, and settled into a position near the side door to the ballroom, where he could see the main room without stepping into it. From there, the event looked like a movie someone had turned the sound down on. People in formal wear moved through pools of light. The band played a jazz standard. Laughter floated up muted. Madison entered on her father's arm. Her dress was black, clean-lined with a high neckline and a low back. Her hair fell in soft waves instead of the usual severe knot. She wore the company like another piece of clothing, invisible but present. When she stepped into the ballroom, heads turned. Beside her, Charles looked like he had been poured into his tuxedo. His smile was broad and contained no warmth that did not serve a purpose. Harrison Cole arrived 10 minutes later. He was the son of a senior senator, with the easy posture of someone who had never had to worry about security deposits. His family's energy committee connections made him useful. His expensive grin made him welcome in photos. Charles steered him toward Madison as if fulfilling a promise. "You remember Harrison?" he said. "Of course," Madison said. Her lips bent into a practiced shape. "Thank you for coming." "Would not miss it," Harrison said. "My father says if North Star is half as solid as your press, we should all be very impressed." "Tell your father we plan to be more than half as solid," she said. Charles watched the exchange with satisfaction. "Walk our guest through the evening," he said quietly to Madison. "Make him feel the future." It was phrased as a suggestion. It carried the weight of a command. She took Harrison's offered arm. Around them, cameras flashed. From the side door, Luke watched them circle the room. A waiter offered him a tray of champagne as he stood in the shadow of a pillar. Luke declined with a small shake of his head. He knew why she was on Harrison's arm. They had talked about the gala in advance in whispers on her couch while the city glowed below. "It keeps questions down," she had said. "It gives my father something he understands to point at." "Like a decoy," Luke had said. "Like a prop," she had answered. Knowing did not make the sight easier. He watched Madison tilt her head toward Harrison as he spoke, her expression polite, distant. He saw the way her eyes flicked once toward the darker edge of the room, where she could not possibly see him, but where he stood anyway. He did not try to catch her attention. The risk was not worth the brief satisfaction. The evening moved through its required beats. Speeches. A video about North Star's latest philanthropic efforts, heavy on footage of children in community centers lit by their grids. Charles spoke about vision. Madison spoke about responsibility. Harrison spoke for 90 seconds about the importance of public-private partnership and smiled in a way that would look good on the evening news. The band picked up. Drinks flowed. Luke walked. The perimeter checked the temporary power distribution, made sure nothing overloaded. He fixed a bulky spotlight, tightened a loose connector, answered a hotel engineer's question about voltage with a patience he did not feel. By the time the band slid into a slower song, it was late. On the ballroom floor, couples rotated under the chandeliers. Harrison guided Madison into the dance with the ease of someone who had been taught how before he could drive. His hand rested a fraction too low on her back. She endured his attempts at conversation, giving him just enough to keep things smooth. After 3 songs and 2 more drinks, he suggested they get some air. "There is a balcony," he said. "You look like you could use actual oxygen." She agreed for reasons that had nothing to do with his observation. The balcony ran along one side of the ballroom, half shielded from view by long curtains. Outside, the air was crisp. The city spread below in a net of light. The music from inside came through in softened pulses. Harrison handed her a fresh glass of champagne. "You were good up there," he said. "On stage, you sell the whole save the world thing very convincingly." "It is easier to sell when you believe parts of it," she said. He laughed. "Adorable," he said. "I like that you still pretend belief has anything to do with what we do." He stepped closer. She shifted half a step back, the cold air sliding down the open line of her spine. Inside, near the side door, Luke checked a panel and glanced toward the curtains that led to the balcony. His feet moved before his mind had fully formed a reason. On the balcony, Harrison rested one hand on the rail beside Madison's hip, blocking her path back to the doors. "You know," he said, voice dropping, "our fathers have talked about aligning more formally. Energy policy optics. Power couples photograph well." She looked at him. "We are colleagues at an event," she said. "Let us leave it there." "Come on," he said. He leaned closer, breath warm with alcohol. "You can loosen the grip sometimes. No cameras out here, no board, just us." His hand slid from the rail to her waist. Her body tensed. Inside, Luke pushed through the curtain. He saw Harrison's hand. He saw Madison's shoulders stiffen. He saw the way she turned her face away as Harrison angled his toward her. "Ma'am," Luke said more sharply than protocol allowed. Both of them looked up. Madison's eyes met Luke's across the haze of the balcony lights. For a heartbeat, something passed between them. Frustration, warning, a plea. She straightened. "I am fine," she said. Her tone stopped him in the doorway. To Harrison, she added, "Remove your hand or I will remove it for you." He smiled, slow and sloppy. "Now that I would like to see," he said. He squeezed. Madison's patience broke. She shifted her weight, brought her knee up in a fast, efficient motion, and connected solidly with the inside of Harrison's thigh. Not the cinematic place more painful for being a touch off. He folded halfway, gasping, one hand flying to the offended area. "That is assault," he wheezed. "That is self-defense," she said. The noise drew attention inside. Heads turned toward the balcony. Voices rose. Charles appeared in the doorway before Luke could move. "What is going on?" he asked, voice cutting through the smaller sounds. Harrison straightened with effort. "Nothing that shows well on camera," he said. "I will go collect what is left of my dignity." He limped past Charles and disappeared into the room. One hand still pressed low, his expression a mix of humiliation and calculation. Charles watched him go, then turned his full attention on Madison. "You need a senator's son at my gala," he said. "He put his hand on me when I asked him not to," she said. "I am not saying he did not deserve it," Charles said. His eyes were cold. "I am saying you did not think about timing." Luke stood just inside the curtain, half-shadowed conflict, written in the line of his body. He could retreat. He could stay. Either way, he was present, when Charles's gaze shifted and landed on him. Recognition flickered, the facility badge, the borrowed tie, the face from the photos in the envelope. "There it is," Charles said softly. He stepped onto the balcony. "Everyone else," he called over his shoulder, voice rising, "go back to your drinks. The show is over." Music inside resumed its hold. Conversations climbed back up, although more than a few sets of eyes kept drifting toward the open door. Charles closed the distance between himself and Luke. "You," he said. "Sir," Luke answered. The word tasted different now. "You have had a good run," Charles said. "You impressed people. You played hero with my generator. You had coffee in rooms you do not belong in. It ends tonight." Madison moved toward them. "Stop," she said. Charles held up a hand. "You do not speak," he said to her. "Not yet." To Luke, he said louder, "You are done at North Star. Pick up your things tomorrow under security escort. Your contract is terminated. There will be no reference, no quiet word in any helpful ear." "You cannot blacklist him," Madison said. "That is illegal." "What I can do," Charles said, "is make sure that every hiring manager in this city who touches infrastructure knows he is a liability. That is just sharing my opinion. You taught me that opinions are safe." The muscles in Luke's jaw worked. "You do what you need to do," he said. "I will find work. People still need their lights on whether you talk to them or not." "Maybe," Charles said, "but your daughter will need a school. The good ones care about stability. They do not love custody dramas, or fathers who drag their children into the splash zone of someone else's empire." The mention of Mia sliced through the controlled anger like a sharper blade. "You leave her out of this," Luke said. His voice dropped all the more dangerous for the quiet. "I intend to," Charles said, "by removing you from this equation." Madison stepped short between them. "That is enough," she said. "You do not get to threaten his child." Charles looked at her, then as if seeing her not as a CEO or a daughter, but as a variable he could not quite control. "You put her in the line of fire when you walked into his apartment," he said. "You did that, not me." The band inside swung into another holiday standard. The incongruity scraped at the edges of the scene. Luke looked at Madison. In his eyes she saw three things: hurt because of what had been said, understanding because he had predicted some version of this, and something like release because now the shape of the fight was clear. "This is why I told you to be sure," he said quietly. She wanted to reach for him, to take his hand in front of everyone and break the pattern her father had written. Habit held her still. "Leave," Charles said to Luke again. "If you care at all about that kid, you will walk away now and not come back." Luke's shoulders straightened. He looked at Madison. "It has been an honor keeping your lights on," he said. He did not wait for an answer. He walked back through the curtains, through the crowd that parted just enough to let him pass. Some had the decency to look away. Others watched closely already, shaping the story they would tell later. His exit closed in behind him like a mouth. On the balcony, Charles let out a slow breath. "Now," he said to Madison, "you can come back inside, fix what is left of this evening, and stop behaving like a teenager with a crush on the help." She did not move. "You just threatened a child's future to draw lines around your own ego," she said. "That is not business. That is cruelty." "You call it what you like," he said. "I call it containing risk. Harrison is still salvageable. His father will accept an apology. We will blame his behavior on the bar. You will laugh it off in an interview. You will stand next to him in a photo if we need you to. That is the job. That is the life." He extended his arm toward the doors. "Come on," he said. "Enough foolishness." She looked at his hand, the same hand that had signed her school forms, her first work contract, the founding documents of the company everyone associated with her name now. The same hand that had never once held hers when she cried at night after finding a note on a bathroom floor. Inside, the chandeliers glowed. The ballroom waited. Out beyond the balcony, the city spread in a grid of light. She thought of Mia asleep in a small bedroom with a robot on her dresser. She thought of Luke's hands black with oil coaxing a dead machine back to life. She thought of her mother's face in the silver frame on her desk, smiling at a future she never reached. "No," Madison said. The word landed softly the way a stone does when it drops into deep water. Charles blinked. "No," he repeated. "That is not an option. It is the only one that feels even remotely like mine," she said. She straightened a shoulders-back spine, aligned as if for a different kind of stage. "I am done letting you decide which parts of my life are acceptable," she said. "Done pretending that proximity to you is the only measure of success. Done treating people like tools because that is the only way you know how to see them." His mouth tightened. "Be careful," he said. "You are tired, you are emotional, you will regret saying this." I have regretted keeping quiet for 18 years, she said. I can live with regretting the alternative. She turned without waiting for his reply. Inside the ballroom, noise washed over her as she stepped through the curtains. Conversation stuttered for a second, then resumed with a forced swell. Eyes followed her, some open, some hidden, behind polite interest. She set her half-full champagne flute on the nearest tray without looking. The stem made a sharp sound against the glass. Then she walked across the room, past donors and directors, and polished handshakes, past the table, with North Star's logo embossed on every place card, past the door where the staff held it open with a discreet hand. Out in the hotel's service corridor, the air cooled. The music faded to a dull thump through the walls. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The floor smelled of mop water and something fried from the kitchen below. She followed the signs for parking. Each step took her farther from the world she had been told was the only one worth living in, and closer to the one where a man in a borrowed tie had just been told he had nothing left to lose. The hotel's service exit opened onto the underground lot. Concrete columns, numbered spaces, the dull echo of dripping water. Luke's truck sat near the far wall, where staff had been told to park. The hood was already closed. His tool bag lay open in the bed, half-packed, as if he had run out of reasons to keep sorting. He stood with his hand on the tailgate tie, loosened jacket gone. The little robot Mia had drawn on his collar had faded during the night, a faint ghost of marker. "You really are terrible at staying where people put you," he said, without turning when he heard her footsteps. "You are leaving?" she said. "Seemed like a good time," he answered. "Your father does not bluff. I have seen that type before. He will keep swinging until something breaks." "Something already did," she said. "He meant me," Luke said. "He will take my job, then try to take the rest. If I stick around, it makes a better show." He began to zip the tool bag. The sound was small and final. "Where will you go?" she asked. "Away," he said. "Somewhere far enough that when he tells people I am unstable and ungrateful, they have to look at me instead of the name on his card. There is always a grid that needs work." "And Mia?" she asked. "She comes with me," he said. "Always." He lifted the bag and set it in the truck bed. When he faced her, the overhead light caught the tired lines around his eyes, the set of his jaw. "This part," he said, "where the person who just watched their world crack asks the person holding the sledgehammer to stay, I have seen it too. It is sweet. It does not help." Her throat tightened. "You think I am here to ask you to disappear quietly?" she said. "I think you are here to say you are sorry," he said. "And you are. I can see that. It is not your fault your father is who he is. It is not your fault that he could use me to hit you." He shrugged slightly. "I will survive," he said. "It is what I do." She stepped closer. "What if I do not want to survive like that anymore?" she said. He frowned. "What does that even mean?" he asked. "It means I walked out of a room full of people who think they know exactly who I am supposed to be," she said. "I told my father no. I have never done that and meant it. It means I'm not going back." The words hung there, vibrating like a wire. "You are resigning as CEO in a parking garage," he said. "Probably not the cleanest venue," she said. "But yes, I will call the lawyers in the morning. I will give the board my notice. They can have their courteous statements and their search committees. They can take the building and the titles." "You have worked your whole life for that office," he said. "I worked my whole life to prove to one man that I could carry his company," she said. "I was wrong about what proof I needed." He searched her face, trying to see where the panic might be hiding. He did not find any, only a strange calm. "You do not have to pick me to rebel against him," he said. "You could move to Bali and start painting sunsets." "I would get bored of sunsets," she said. "I am not picking you as an act against him. I am picking you because when something breaks you, move toward it instead of away." She took his hand. "Come with me," she said. "We will figure out the rest. Where to live, how to work, how to keep Mia in school and in pizza. None of that scares me as much as going back upstairs and pretending tonight did not happen." His fingers tightened around hers despite himself. "You would trade a tower for a walk up," he said. "Black cars for a truck that dies in the rain. Boardrooms for school gyms." She nodded. "In exchange for a kid who wants me at her birthday," she said. "For a man who does not flinch from heat or hard truths. For work that does not end at a press release. That is a good deal." He let out a breath that sounded like it had been held for years. "You have a talent for making ridiculous choices sound reasonable," he said. "Is that a yes?" she asked. He looked past her for a second toward the ramp that led out of the garage toward the world he had known how to navigate even when it tried to crush him. then back at her at the woman who had stepped out of her own story and into his with no promise of a soft landing. "Yeah," he said quietly, "that is a yes." She smiled small and real. It felt like the first true thing she had given herself in a very long time. They were married 3 months later on a Tuesday morning. The courthouse smelled of paper and old varnish. The judge had a kind face and an efficient manner. Mia wore a yellow dress and sneakers and took her job as ring bearer very seriously. She sprinkled imaginary flower petals as she walked down the short aisle because she had decided the ceremony needed more color. 2 of Luke's friends from his Air Force days stood on his side stiffer in jackets than they had ever been in uniform. Madison had no one from North Star there. The board sent an arrangement. Charles did not, until he did. He arrived just before they exchanged vows, a little out of breath, a little smaller, without a boardroom around him. He took a seat in the back without a word. After the judge pronounced them married, Mia launched herself at them, hugging both knees at once. The bailiff dabbed at his eyes and pretended it was dust. Outside on the courthouse steps, Charles approached. Luke instinctively shifted so that Madison and Mia were half behind him. Old habits. Charles looked at him, then at his daughter. "You look like yourself," he said to Madison. It sounded like an accusation and a surrender at once. "This is myself," she said. He turned to Luke. "You will take care of her," he said. It was not the tone of a man making demands. It was the question of a father standing in a place that had no profit margin. "With my life," Luke said. Charles nodded once. He reached into his coat and handed Madison a flat envelope. "This was in a box I kept too long," he said. "I did not know what to do with it. Maybe you will." He left without waiting for thanks. On the bus ride back to South Seattle, Madison opened the envelope. Inside was a photograph. Her mother on her wedding day, the same silver frame image that had lived on her desk, but this print was untouched. The colors were warm. The woman in the picture looked straight at the camera, joy unfiltered. On the back in her mother's looping handwriting were words Madison had never seen. "Love is only a liability if you choose the wrong person to be strong for." The old note in the bathroom had been one sentence. This was the rest. She passed the photo to Luke. His fingers skimmed the ink. "That is a much better line," he said. Mia leaned over the seat to look. "She looks like you," Mia said. Madison felt something unclench in her chest. "Maybe one day," she said. 5 years later, the sign over the door read, "Lighthouse Cooperative Energy." The office was 1 floor above a laundromat 2 blocks from a community center's whose power bill had dropped by half since Lighthouse redesigned their microgrid. The space was small, crowded with maps and whiteboards, but the light through the windows was generous. Luke sat at a desk covered in schematics, talking a church in Tacoma, through a battery installation over video. Madison stood at the other end of the room, arguing good-naturedly with a grant officer about deadlines. Neither wore anything that required dry cleaning. On the wall between their desks hung 3 frames. One held their modest incorporation papers. One showed a photograph of the first completed project, a row of townhouses lit up in the early dark of winter. The third held the picture of Madison's mother smiling into a future that had turned out differently than she expected, watching over a room that hummed with a quieter kind of ambition. Mia, now 12 and long-limbed, burst through the door with a medal around her neck and a robot under her arm. "We won state," she announced without preamble. "Beacon beat every other bot in the maze." Beacon was Navigator's great-grandchild, a sleek thing with more sensors than its ancestor, and a personality that came entirely from Mia's code. Luke spun his chair around. "Of course you did," he said. Madison crossed the room, catching her in a hug that nearly knocked the medal sideways. "I assume this calls for pizza," Madison said. "It calls for so much pizza," Mia said, "and soda, and cake, and a toast." They celebrated that night at the same booth in Marco's that had once held a tired father and a little girl waving a slice like a flag. The owner greeted them by name. The pizza arrived with extra pepperoni. Mia stood on the seat and lifted her glass of soda. "To Mom and Dad," she said. She still tried the word sometimes, watching Madison's face each time as if to be sure it was allowed. "For proving that when something is broken, you do not throw it away. You fix it together." The other customers at nearby tables smiled, catching only the shape of the moment, not the history behind it. Under the table, Luke's hand found Madison's. Their wedding rings clicked softly. Later on the balcony of their apartment, they watched the neighborhood lights flick on. Not the sweeping skyline of a downtown tower, but a patchwork of windows and street lamps, and the occasional glow from a porch wrapped in ivy. "Do you ever miss it?" Luke asked. "The view from 40 floors up." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I think I finally understand the view," she said. "It looks better from here." He laughed quietly. "You fixed a lot of circuits," he said. "So did you," she answered. The city hummed. Somewhere a generator they had installed kicked in to bridge a brief flicker in the grid. In the apartment behind them, Beacon's indicator light blinked as the robot recharged for whatever obstacle course Mia would build next. Madison tightened her fingers around Luke's. "I did not lose anything that mattered," she said. "I just rewired a life that was already ready to burn out." He kissed her, the sound of distant transformers filling the spaces between their breaths. For the first time, the lights around them felt less like proof that she could keep the world from going dark, and more like quiet evidence that after all the failures and false starts, something had finally been repaired. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.